The Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? And I call the member for Bradfield.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker, when communities consider major redevelopment proposals, the question before us is never merely one of land use or architectural form. It's a question of values. What kind of neighbourhoods do we want for our families, our young people and for the future? In my electorate of Bradfield, there's a proposal to redevelop the St Ives shopping village. The proposal includes an enhanced retail space, new restaurants, cafes, outdoor dining and an entertainment precinct anchored by a 7-screen cinema. The developer also wants to repurpose buildings to make way for a tavern, the ground floor of which would house a 200 square metre gaming room. I've had nearly 60 constituents contact me about this. The theme of the correspondence is that the proximity of the poker machines to a family-friendly shopping precinct, which has an existing playground, a skate park and cinemas proposed, is socially irresponsible and would dramatically change the character of the village. We already have 737 electronic gaming machines in Bradfield, and constituents are telling me we don't need more. Residents have also raised concerns about the broader social impacts associated with poker machine gambling-related stress. These are not hypothetical issues, they reflect a deeply personal experience for some families. That's increased financial hardship, mental strain and family breakdown, including the heightened risk of domestic violence and research that has repeatedly linked these to gambling-related stresses. Nationally, Australians lose $13 billion every year on poker machines alone, according to analysis by the Australia Institute, and these losses are not evenly spread. They come disproportionately from people experiencing stress, loneliness, housing insecurity and other vulnerabilities. Importantly, local residents have made it clear that they support redevelopment, but they support redevelopment with purpose. What they want are facilities that strengthen the social fabric, a local, flexible arts and performance space, community health services and other infrastructure that supports families rather than exposing them to preventable harms. Deputy Speaker, some community members have shared personal stories, including experiences of growing up in households affected by poker machine addiction. One resident described gambling as secretly destructive, saying that it ruins individuals, tears apart families and eventually communities, because strong communities are made up of healthy, grounded individuals and families. Their words reflect the quiet but profound harm that gambling can cause when it's woven into everyday environment. And I rise today to speak volumes to the concerns expressed by an increasing number of people in the St Ives area and surrounds. A redevelopment of this scale should be an opportunity to build a healthier, more resilient and connected community, not to introduce risk known to undermine those very goals.
Call the member for Boothby.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Ageing is a difficult subject for many people. In a hyper-commercialised world, youth is considered a virtue and age is devalued. But not for Dr. Kay Cleave. A teacher, meditation guide, writer, filmmaker and researcher, Dr. Cleave was recently presented with the Active Citizenship Award by the City of Holdfast Bay in my electorate of Boothby. Dr. Cleave's life has been riven by personal trauma and tragedy. Her father passed away when she was 13 and her teenage daughter when she was 49. It was healthy living, physical and mental, that kept her emotionally afloat, a routine she maintains to this day. Dr. Cleave does yoga, dances, swims, bikes. She actively promotes open conversations about grief and loss, and she's a social media phenomenon. With 1.8 million followers on Instagram, Dr. Cleave spreads the good word about positive ageing, mindfulness and emotional resilience. Her Instagram sees her regularly performing acrobatic contortions that would challenge the most capable of gymnasts, because at 76 years old, age is just a number for Dr. Cleave. Her message is simple: it's never too late to live a healthier version of yourself. Old age is not a burden, it's not the beginning of terminal decline. In the famous words of Maggie Kuhn, an advocate against ageism, old age is not a disease, It's a triumph. Congratulations, Dr. Cleave.
A division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The Proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions. Are there any constituency statements by members? And in continuation, I call the member for Boothby.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The local sporting championship grants are awarded to promising young Australians participating in state, national or international championships. My constituent Henry Zoop was one such recipient last year. Henry is a talented sailor. Last September he travelled to Singapore as a member of the Australian Optimist Development Squad to participate in the Singapore National Sailing Championships, a highly competitive regatta involving 3 days of intensive training followed by 4 days of racing against competitors from around the world. Conditions were hot and humid with light winds, which continually posed a tactical challenge. On one occasion, with 100 boats on the starting line, it took almost 2 hours and 13 attempts to get the race going due to repeated recalls. Henry's father informs us, despite these challenges, the regatta was an incredible experience for Henry. Racing in such a large and diverse fleet helped him to develop resilience, sharpen his tactical awareness and adapt to unfamiliar conditions. It was a valuable learning opportunity both on and off the water and will stay with him for years to come. Henry is the definition of a local sporting champion. Beyond being remarkably talented, he is determined, disciplined, hardworking and maintains a positive attitude. I congratulate Henry on his exceptional achievements and I don't doubt that we'll be hearing more of Henry's sporting feats in the future.
I call the member for Curtin.
I rise today to address a quiet but deeply damaging failure in our democracy, this government's refusal to respond to the parliamentary inquiries it commissioned. Australians often see the adversarial theatre of question time, but it's in the committee rooms, away from the cameras, where much of the careful, constructive and multi-partisan work of this parliament actually happens. Members and senators from across the political spectrum sit together to examine complex issues and develop recommendations grounded in expert advice. It's one of the strongest parts of our democratic system. Right now, that system has become a black hole into which expert testimony, community experience and months of work simply disappear. Since 2022, 55 House committee inquiries commissioned by this government have received no response, despite being well beyond the 6-month deadline. Half are more than a year overdue. For each inquiry, the government identified a problem worth investigating. More than 3,500 people and organisations, including experts, frontline workers, academics, community groups and everyday Australians, contributed their time and effort to these particular inquiries because they believed the government was listening. Committee members held days of public hearings, reviewed evidence and tabled reports only for them to be ignored. And the Senate picture is even worse. More than 150 inquiry reports tabled since the last election have received no final government response. This is not merely lax administration. It's a failure of integrity, accountability and respect. It wastes public resources and squanders the best work of the parliament. The topics at the centre of these inquiries are critical. They address some of Australia's most urgent and difficult policy challenges: terrorism, illicit drugs, online safety, plastic pollution, energy security, gambling harm and economic opportunities for First Nations people. Meanwhile, the harms these inquiries sought to address continue to grow. Since the drowning in plastic report was tabled, another 250,000 tonnes of plastic have entered our environment. While the financial abuse inquiry recommendations have languished, another 620,000 Australians have likely become victims of this insidious form of domestic violence. The government's inaction is undermining public confidence. Constituents ask me every week why nothing changes. Currently, Australia has no coherent system to ensure government tracks, responds to or implements inquiry recommendations. We don't have to accept this. Other jurisdictions already use public tracking dashboards and independent monitoring to ensure inquiry work leads to action. An Australian independent, publicly accessible recommendation tracker would allow the public to see whether government is listening and acting. Australians deserve a government that listens, learns and acts. We owe it to the people who participate in these processes in good faith. The government must do better.
Order. Member's time has expired. I call the member for Richmond.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, locals in my electorate of Richmond on the far north coast of New South Wales know they can always count on me and I'll always deliver on all of my promises. And I'm really proud to be delivering on all my 2025 election commitments. And this includes the Tweed Heads Medicare Urgent Care Clinic, $2 million for Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital and $3 million for a North Coast Crime Prevention Infrastructure Plan. Now, Deputy Speaker, we officially opened the Tweed Heads Urgent Care Clinic at Tweed Health for Everyone Super Clinic last December. And the clinic provides locals with free urgent care that they need, fully bulk billed, open 7 days a week from 7:30am to 7:30pm. And all you need is your Medicare card. So many locals have told me what a huge difference it is having the clinic there to just really fill that crucial gap in providing urgent health care. And since the clinic's actually first opened, there's been a daily average of 38 presentations, and nearly 60% of patients who visit the clinic would have otherwise gone to an emergency department. So it's taking the pressure off the Tweed Valley Hospital. Also, our government's taking decisive action to better protect our native wildlife on the North Coast. This includes my 2025 election commitment for $2 million for the expansion of operations at the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital. Opened in 2020, the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital operates 7 days a week and has treated approximately 7,000 native animals, including hundreds of threatened species. It's a licensed all-species wildlife hospital and operates inside a custom-built semi-trailer, making it Australia's only mobile wildlife hospital, and it can be deployed during natural disasters as well. And recently I visited their facility in Lennox Head, and there I met Biscuit, a tiny bandicoot, who's just one of the thousands of native animals that Byron Bay Wildlife will be able to continue to help and to continue to keep helping because of the funding from our government. Also, Deputy Speaker, I'm equally proud to be delivering on my $3 million election commitment for a North Coast Crime Prevention Infrastructure Plan. And as a former frontline police officer, I know firsthand how important it is that we have more resources to strengthen community safety, including CCTV. So this commitment will fund infrastructure measures for crime prevention and community safety right throughout our North Coast communities. The commitment includes $1 million for each of the councils, Tweed, Byron and Ballina, and the funding can be used for CCTV, it could be used for lighting, bollards, fencing or landscaping, all these measures to improve community safety. And this has come about because so many people in the community were calling for it, and I'm very proud to be delivering it, and all of these projects will be completed by 2027. Deputy Speaker, I especially want to thank all those members of the committee who advocated.
A division has been called for in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions. Are there any constituency statements by honourable members? And I call the member for Dawson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise today to celebrate a significant milestone in our region and to pay tribute to the rich cultural tapestry that strengthens North Queensland. Recently, I had the great honour of joining the Townsville Tamil community to celebrate Tamil Heritage Month and the vibrant festival of Tamil Pongal. Tamil is not merely a language, it's one of the oldest living classical languages in the world. A bridge to an ancient past that continues to thrive in North Queensland. For 11 years, the Townsville Tamil community has met their share with their identity, ensuring their heritage is woven into the broader Australian story. This year's celebration was particularly special, marking the very first time Tamil Heritage Month has been celebrated in a regional city. While the local Tamil population may be modest in size, their contribution to our state is immense. As a third-generation tomato farmer, I've seen firsthand how the community has stepped up for our primary producers. I want to personally acknowledge the work of Dr. Siva Subramaniam, a man of great respect in the Tamil community. When I was farming, I remember when the silverleaf whitefly threatened to wipe out our horticultural area. It was Dr. Subramaniam's pioneering work using a biological control that made the whitefly manageable and saved our industry. Australia Horticulture owes him and his scientific expertise a great deal of gratitude. Deputy Speaker, that tradition of service continues today in our healthcare system. On a deeply personal note, the skill of this community has touched my own family. I'm incredibly proud to say that I've recently become a grandfather. Thank you. My eldest son and his wife welcomed a beautiful baby girl last month. She came into the world 1 month early. We are extremely grateful for the expertise and specialist paediatrician, Dr. Sitham Bam Am Pili Siva Yoga Nathan. His professionalism and care ensured a great start to life. He is a daily reminder of the incredible impact that Tamil professionals have on our families and on our future. I would also like to personally thank Dr. Aggie Land for the invitation to join these celebrations. I was truly moved by the incredible energy of the event, from the authentic flavours of the traditional food to the vibrant rhythmic beauty of the cultural dances. By investing in your culture and your children, you are equipping the next generation with a sense of pride that benefits us all. Thank you for the example you set in embracing the life in regional Australia while keeping your rich heritage alive.
I call the member for Holt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last month, I joined the members of Compassionate Hands to celebrate Lorry. For many Sikh and Punjabi families in my electorate of Holt, and indeed across the world, this festival holds a deep cultural and personal significance. Lorry marks the harvest season, but it is also so much more than that. It is a celebration of gratitude, family, and community, bringing people together around the Lorry fire to share stories, laughter, and hope for the year ahead. I want to thank the entire Compassionate Hands team, especially the President, Jagdeep Singh Sukhji, for organising such a wonderful event and for creating spaces where culture, faith, and community can celebrate together. I also want to send my very best wishes to the families who celebrated their very first Lorry, welcoming a new baby, or celebrating a new marriage. These moments are incredibly meaningful, and Lorry provides a beautiful way to begin a new chapter surrounded by love and community. May the warmth of the Lorry fire bring people and everyone good health, wealth, happiness, and prosperity. Deputy Speaker, that same spirit of connection and community was evident at the Haynes Southern District Cricket Club's annual Ladies' Day High Tea, a celebration of vital role that women and families play in sport. It was an afternoon complete with market stalls, delicious snacks, raffles, and of course, door prizes, bringing together mothers, wives, and grandmothers and supporters. The true backbone of every local club. Behind every match, behind every fundraiser, there are families providing essential support emotionally, practically, and psychologically. They organise, they welcome new members, they cheer on players, and in doing so, they build the confidence and resilience that shape not only athletes, but stronger communities. In an age where many of us are pulled towards our screens, community sports stands as a powerful place for connection, friendship, and shared memories. And as women's sport continues to grow and inspire young girls across Holt, I want to thank Vicky Hardy and the entire HSD Cricket Club Committee for their incredible work and hosting such a meaningful event.
Thank you. I call the member for Hinkler.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Sports fans, what a time. This week, Aussies have had the chance to marvel in the talents of skiers on the slopes and legends of the luge at the Winter Olympics, which keeps us captivated in Italy. Meanwhile, my fellow Queenslanders are eagerly anticipating hosting the 2032 Summer Olympics. I was impressed with the sporting prowess on show in my own backyard of Hinkler at the weekend. Our future stars of track and field, with a dream to compete in Brisbane 2032, could well have been in the mix. I had the privilege of presenting medals to those on the podium at Queensland's Central Coast Regional Athletics Championships, hosted by the Bundaberg Athletic and West Bundaberg Little Athletics clubs. One of regional Australia's most prestigious touch football events was hosted in Hinkler at the weekend as well. The biggest ever Bundy Cup attracted 94 teams across 10 divisions with around 4,000 people on site each day. A remarkable event and another example of sport bringing people together and boosting our local economy. Deputy Speaker, Hervey Bay will host the high-level rugby league match next month as the Ipswich Jets take on the Sunshine Coast Falcons in a round 2 clash of the Queensland Host Plus Cup fixture at Ralph Stafford Park. Queensland Rugby League is the fabric of many communities across my electorate and this competition, also known as the Queensland Cup, provides a clear pathway to the NRL for regional talent. Deputy Speaker, it's great to see those successful in sport give back to the game and in particular support grassroots and regional areas. And none do this better than the Bulls Masters. Cricket greats who have formed a non-profit organisation developing cricket in the country areas and supporting community groups such as our men's sheds. Led by former Queensland Sheffield Shield star and Aussie player Jimmy Marr, the Bulls Masters carry out hospital visits, fundraise for charity, encourage our children to play sport and help improve our local facilities. Next week, the Bulls Masters return to Bundaberg for what's been an almost decade-long partnership, this time bringing one of the fastest, if not the quickest, bowler we've ever known, Jeff Thompson, to town. Tomo, that's right. There'll be a fundraising dinner and an exhibition T20 game at Soldier Oval featuring a current Big Bash players taking on a Bundaberg Invitational 11. Deputy Speaker, I'm passionate about sport and seeing my community get active. Tomorrow night I'll join our State Member for Burnett, Stephen Bennett, and other local and state government representatives for a Sports On showcase, and an evening where we'll catch up with local sporting clubs and associations to ensure they can get the latest information about what's on offer from all levels of government to help sport thrive. And you never know, maybe a youngster from Hinkler watching the Winter Olympics on the telly, attending a regional athletics championships, or having a school visit from a cricketing star could be inspired to work hard and achieve great things too.
I call the member for Dixon.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to take this opportunity to speak on the tabling of the Thriving Kids No Child Left Behind report. I acknowledge that firstly acknowledge the many people with a disability and their families who contributed to this inquiry, particularly those in my own electorate of Dixon. Your voices matter, your lived experiences matter, and this report very much puts your stories and the needs of children with a developmental delay or disability and their families at the heart of the recommendations. I also thank the organisations, experts, workers and advocates who contributed to the inquiry and my colleagues on the committee, including the member for Nichols. As a woman with a disability, I am incredibly proud to have been part of this inquiry as a member of the committee. I love the NDIS, I love that Labor created it, and I love that we will always work to make it better. The NDIS is dignity, opportunity and independence, but it has to work for everyone. We know from this inquiry that the NDIS has been failing children with developmental delay or disability. We know because we were told over and over again during the inquiry. Families told us that children are waiting too long for diagnosis, missing out on early intervention and struggling to access supports, especially in regional, rural and remote communities where services are patchy or non-existent. Kids have been falling through the cracks, and those cracks are now deep chasms of inequity, particularly for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, children in out-of-home care and children from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds or whose parents lack financial resources. The committee makes 16 recommendations, and the very first is ensuring that any change is inclusive, co-designed and grounded in evidence, and that a rapid review be undertaken 2 years after implementation to ensure it is delivering what it is intended to deliver. The committee recommends a staged implementation, safeguards to protect current supports, improved access in regional areas, a multidisciplinary workforce, Medicare-funded developmental checks and a single entry point with multiple pathways for families seeking help. During the inquiry, it became very clear that leaving the system as it is would be devastating for our kids and their future. This report is a much-needed roadmap to ensure that every child receives the early support they need to thrive.
I call the member for Nichols.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In Parliament this week, I went to an event hosted by the Speaker to launch the Great Aussie Athlete Barbecue. It's a celebration of sport, summer and mateship. all while raising vital funds for the Aussie Athlete Fund. And then funds raised help cover training, travel, coaching, wellbeing and access to sport for young athletes across the country. We are in the middle of a Winter Olympics and building towards the Summer Games in Brisbane 2032. And it's never been more important to not just watch with pride and cheer from the sidelines, but to get involved. And I shouldn't have been surprised, Deputy Speaker, that the first grade athlete I spotted at the event was from Shepparton in my own electorate of Nichols. Louise Dobson played 230 international hockey games for Australia, including being part of the gold medal winning team at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. Louise and I will be hosting an Aussie Athletes fundraising barbecue in Shepparton later this year. And like so many great athletes to emerge from the Goulburn-Murray region, Louise started her career at a local club, the Windangs Hockey Club in the Shepparton Hockey Association, and she honed her skills training and playing on community facilities. So did Adam Uze, current coach of the Richmond Football Club and former Melbourne champ, who was in Parliament House last night. He's a product of Shepparton's proud Albanian community. Adam's footy career didn't get off to a great start because he turned up to play in baggy board shorts and he copped a bit of cheek from the spectators, but then he kicked 20 goals, which is why people now remember the shorts. Adam played at Shepparton United before being drafted to Melbourne, and he played 271 senior games for the Demons, including a run of 226 consecutive games. And a BMX track was built in Shepparton in 1980 as that sport took off. And Lee Egan was just a kid, but he was a strong and fearless racer. He was soon dominating and winning Victorian and Australian titles. He went to the World Champs in Japan in '84 and not only won World 17 class, but he beat open class field to become Australia's first elite men's BMX world champion. And there are dozens of elite athletes from a broad range of sports in the Greater Shepparton Sports Hall of Fame. They all grew up in an active community that supported their dreams, and they had good facilities to train on and to be coached on. And Julie Goss is an example. She grew up in Tatura and took up basketball in 1971 at high school. She played at the Army Drill Hall before a basketball stadium was built later that year. She went on to represent Australia at the World Championships in Colombia and was offered a university scholarship with Louisiana State, where she is now a Hall of Famer. The then new stadium that she played in is now more than 50 years old, and it desperately needs an upgrade, and it desperately needs expansion to cater for growth in basketball and other sports. And the Coalition committed $20 million to that before the last election. The government must support our future champions by funding the facilities they need to participate into the future. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Hear, hear. Order. I call the member for Kingston Smith.
Thanks, Speaker. Each year on Australia Day, we honour those who've given outstanding contributions to the Australian community. The Australia Day Honours Awards recognise those who've worked tirelessly to make our nation better, often quietly and never for the recognition itself. As the member for Kingston Smith, I'm proud to pay tribute to those that were honoured from our community in the 2026 list. They represent the very best of us across fields as diverse as medicine, construction, sport and academia. I'd like to acknowledge those appointed as members of the Order of Australia for their significant service. From Randwick, Distinguished Professor James McNamara, AM. James is recognised for his significant service to tertiary education, communications research and public relations. His work shapes how we understand media and communications in a complex world. From Kensington, Professor Nicholas Maniolis, AM. Nicholas has dedicated his life to medicine, specifically in the vital fields of immunology and rheumatic diseases. His service provides quality of life for countless Australians. From Coogee, Mr John Sussman, AM. John is honoured for significant service to the hospitality industry and the seafood sector. Anyone who loves Australia knows that seafood is an important part of our community and a vital industry to our culture and economy, and John's been a champion of it for decades. We also have a poignant inclusion in this year's list. We honour the late Dr Nicholas Medland, AM. Though sadly no longer with us, his legacy remains. He's recognised for significant service to both sexual health medicine and as a physician and epidemiologist. We send our deepest respects to his partner, Mr Mark Gussie, and his family. This award ensures Dr Medland's contribution to public health will never be forgotten. We also want to congratulate recipients of the Medal of the Order of Australia. Phil Jenkinson from
Maroubra, who's given extraordinary service teaching young kids to sail at the Yarra Bay Sailing Club for decades, and through his work through South Sydney Junior Rugby League with the Mustangs. From Botany, Tim Murphy, OAM. Tim's honoured for his service to the construction industry and the wider community. I'd also like to highlight the Meritorious Award for Trent Brown. Trent I've known for many, many years, he's a great bloke. From Kingsford, who received the Australian Fire Service Medal for his distinguished service. The military service recipients Lieutenant Commander Jay Pettifer, Warrant Officer Lyndon Quirk and Warrant Officer Class 1 Kimberly Keeley. These awards happen because someone took the time to nominate them, and I encourage others. If you know someone in Kingsford Smith doing outstanding work, please nominate them. And to our 2026 nominees, thank you for your service to our community and to our country, and congratulations on this well-deserved recognition.
I call the member for Cook.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. At a recent listening post in my community, I met Harper, who read me a letter I would like to read here today. Good morning, Mr Kennedy. My name is Harper and I am 11 years old. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I'd like to briefly share my concerns about the dangers of e-bikes and why I believe stronger safety rules are urgently needed. Although e-bikes may look like regular bicycles, they can reach high speeds very quickly. This creates a much higher risk of serious accidents, especially for younger or inexperienced riders. One tragic example has affected me personally. A close friend of mine recently lost one of her friends in an e-bike crash. The rider was thrown from a bike at a very high speed, around 80 kilometres an hour. She collided with a pole. The rider didn't survive. Since then, I have been doing my best to support my friend as she grieves, and it has shown me how devastating these accidents can be for families and communities. These incidents are not isolated. Many riders do not understand how powerful e-bikes are or how easily control can be lost when accelerating, turning suddenly, or facing unexpected obstacles. Some riders also fail to follow traffic rules, increasing the danger to everyone around them. For these reasons, I believe we need clearer and stricter safety measures, such as mandatory helmets for all riders, appropriate age limits for high-powered e-bikes, and better education on traffic laws. Stronger rules would help prevent these tragedies like the one my friend is going through and create a safer environment for everyone. Thank you again, Mr Kennedy, for listening to my concerns. I really appreciate your time and attention. Now, because of Harper and many others like here, the New South Wales Government has now announced a major crackdown on illegal e-bikes. But unfortunately for Harper and Harper's associate, it is far too late. Countless people have been horrendously injured. Countless families have spent tens of thousands of dollars on illegal bikes, all because the New South Wales Government failed to act. And it wasn't just their failure to act. Catherine King here in federal parliament has allowed the importation of these bikes. I've written to Catherine twice about this and never received a response. So I'm glad. I've written to the minister twice and never received a response. So I'm glad we are finally dealing with this, and I want to thank Harper and all of those in my community who've argued for these stronger regulations.
I call the member for Moore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today to recognise two outstanding groups in my community of Moore. Motion by the Ocean, led by Alana Gotteridge and the Periscope crew with their dedicated mentors. Motion by the Ocean exists to strengthen community connection and foster inclusion, ensuring people feel seen, valued and supported. Their mission is to deliver innovative, community-based activities that meet unmet needs and create meaningful social connection while championing a community where everyone belongs. Yeah. Their flagship program, Cycling Without Age Sorrento, offers West Australians pioneering free tri-shore service, giving seniors and people with limited mobility the chance to enjoy fresh air, movement and connection along our coastline. These rides create space for dignity, conversation and shared experience, helping people stay connected to place and to one another. Motion by the Ocean has also expanded its outreach through programs such as Moving Food, which redistributes surplus food to community members in need. I visited Motion by the Ocean's community events, including the recent coastal storytelling sessions and saw firsthand the warmth and the connection that they nurture. I also want to acknowledge the volunteers that bring this work to life. I also rise to celebrate the Periscope crew and their mentors who were winners of the 2026 City of Joondalup Young Community Citizen of the Year Award. Founded in Sorrento in 2020, the Periscope crew is a film collective of young people with disabilities aged 18 to 25. Raised and educated in the City of Joondalup and are operating as part of the Perth-based charity Soul Gestures. From the outset, they set out to change the conversation around disability inclusion by telling stories from every angle. Working with organisations, sports clubs and local councils committed to building more inclusive communities. In 2023, the crew was selected as one of the film teams for the World Transplant Games held in Perth. That opportunity led to their documentary Everywhere, which highlights human connection, authentic inclusion and the life-changing value of organ donation. Everywhere has received 22 awards across 6 continents, been broadcast nationally on SBS and named as a finalist for the Australian Sports Commission Media Awards alongside organisations such as the ABC and Tennis Australia. It was a pleasure to meet the members of the Periscope crew at City of Joondalup citizenship ceremony on Australia Day, and together, Motion by the Ocean and the Periscope crew show what community leadership can achieve. More is richer for your contribution. Thank you.
I call the member for Barara.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I'd like to place on the national record the names of the students from across the Barara electorate who I had the honour of presenting prizes to at last year's school presentation days. These students are acknowledged for their dedication and achievement in their studies and their active citizenship. Jess Ray from Annan Grove Public School, Liam Cape from Arcadia Public, Andrew Paul from Arden Anglican Junior School, Ruth Harnwell from Arden Anglican Senior School, Davis Stanley from Asquith Boys High, Charlotte Payne from Asquith Girls High, Arwen Lowe from Asquith Public, Violet Wade from Beecroft Public, Hayden Wall from Barara Public, Amelia Lloyd from Brooklyn Public, Mia Oakley from Cheltenham Girls High, Zoe T and James Phillips from Cherrybrook Public, Theodore Sobanoff from Clark Road, Jay Lavu from Dural Public, Christian Lane from Epping Boys High, Jedediah Tharian from Epping Heights, Kathy Hand from Epping West, Elena Matti from Epping North, Serena Chaponi from Epping Public, Jordan Harrington from Galston High, Jacob Reeves from Galston Public, Ivy Tanevsky from Glenhaven Public, Rowdy Hitchcock from Glenorrey Public, Aoife Warner from Hillside Public, Angela Yang from Hornsby Girls High, Eliza Guest from Hornsby Heights Public, Alyssa Dadone from Hornsby North Public, Harry Aston from Hornsby South Public, Pashan Sakari from John Purchase Public, Lennon Taylor from Kenthurst Public, Lucy Sard from Loretto Normanhurst, Xavier Eunice from Marion Catholic College, Claire Rahi from Maruta Public, Shaked Ghazi from Masada Senior School and Maya Ghazi from Masada Junior School, Hunter Hartle from Middle Dural Public, Zoe Hutchinson from Mount Cola Public, Ryan Herbert from Mount Kringai Public, Mariella Donnelly from Mount St Benedict's, Jimin Bahik from New Hope, Junhook Cho from Normanhurst Boys, Patrick Moynet from Normanhurst Public, Harlow Walker from Normanhurst West, Emma Onozuka from Northholme Grammar, Fernando Higuchi from Oak Hill College, Benjamin Pell and Zoe Pearce from Pacific Barara Christian School, Cassandra Ptolemy from Pacific Hills Christian School, Cash Daly from Pennant Hills High, Matilda Saunders from Pennant Hills Public, Xavier Shalala from Redfield College, Sophia Awad from St Agatha's, Martha Askew from St Bernard's, Layla Ingham from St Leo's, Eliza Azapati from St Madeline's, Eliza Vita Katapova and Donovan Renard from St Patrick's, Lucy Danahay from Tangara, Nicole Meng from Hills Grammar, Abigail Dennis from Thornley West, Scott Wilson from Waitara Public, Sapphire Datson from Warra Special School, Allegra Wells from West Pennant Hills Public, Skylar Roy from Wideview Public and Matilda Bloodworth from Wiseman's Ferry Public. These students all demonstrate the very best of the next generation through their dedication to their studies and their contributions to our community. I commend all the students in Barara schools and wish them well for the 2026 academic year.
I call the member for Adelaide.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I rise to pay tribute to a remarkable individual from South Australia who recently passed away late last year, and that was radio host from the 5AA program, Leon Biner. Leon was not just a radio announcer and a journalist. He was a trusted voice on radio and an icon of South Australian media. Leon Biden's career in radio spanned 3 decades in Adelaide, but his journey began much earlier. At just the age of 13 years old, he discovered his passion for the spoken word, a passion that would shape his entire life. He officially entered the world of broadcasting in 1966 in Shepparton, Victoria, and from that moment his voice became a fixture on the airwaves. Leon Biner's reputation grew steadily, built on credibility, experience and an unwavering commitment to truth. Eventually he made Adelaide his home and became the host of the Radio 5AA morning program, a talkback show and a program that resonated deeply within Adelaide and our community. It wasn't just a talkback program, Deputy Speaker, it was a lifeline to many South Australians. Leon Biner gave people a voice, he broke stories as they happened and held those in power to account. His program became a trusted source of news and a forum for robust debate. He had interviewed every single Prime Minister. He had interviewed premiers, opposition leaders. He covered politics, news, and he broke leading stories. Leon was persuasive, authoritative, and courageous. He never sheltered away from asking the tough questions, and he did so with integrity and respect. He understood that radio was more than entertainment. It was a platform to help people time and again. Leon used this influence to assist listeners navigating complex bureaucratic challenges. And it wasn't unusual to hear someone come on as a talkback member of the public to raise an issue that was very unfair, that just didn't sound right. The next minute, Leon would be onto the minister and have him on the next day, regardless of what colour, persuasion, political party he belonged to explain why this was happening. So he made many, many changes in terms of legislation through this particular tactic that he had, which was a good thing because people without a voice were heard, and not only were they heard at the highest levels, and for that he gained a reputation of trust. His contributions didn't go unnoticed, Deputy Speaker. Leon was nominated 13 times for the Australian Commercial Radio Award for Best Talkback and Current Affairs, and was also nominated for Australian of the Year on 3 occasions. And that is a testament to his impact on our state and our nation. Sadly, Leon passed away late last year. Our condolences go to Sean, his family, and all those who will forever miss him, not only on radio, but miss him just in general.
The member's time has expired. I call the member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Today, Australians are facing a cost of living crisis that is squeezing families, driving small businesses to the brink and undermining confidence in our economy. Last week, mortgage holders felt the pain as interest rates were lifted for the 13th time since the Albanese Labor government took office. For many Australians, including in my electorate of Lindsay, this is no abstract economic number, it is severe hardship. My constituents have consistently been contacting me with stories of how hard they are doing it. Michelle from Glenmore Park put it plainly, both my husband and I work full-time and we still somehow will need to find the extra money. Likely this means we'll miss out. It's stressful. It's just another hit to our budget. Many Aussies are already struggling day to day. This is one more struggle to endure. Brett from Penrith says it simply. There is no money left after the mortgage, bills and groceries are paid for. Across South Penrith, Marie sums up the sentiment of so many. Cost of living is hitting the roof. And Rosalind from Cambridge Park lays the bare crush of rising costs. Grocery costs have doubled and utility costs are ridiculous. In addition to the mortgage being doubled due to interest rates, private health is also ridiculous. These are not isolated voices. These are hard-working Australians feeling the overwhelming impact of rising prices, rising rates and stagnant wage growth. Small businesses are not immune. Record levels of small business insolvencies are being reported, with thousands folding, not because of global forces beyond our control, but because of persistent inflation and higher costs have made it impossible for them to continue. In New South Wales alone, the 2024-25 financial year shows a record 7,643 businesses were forced into insolvency, marking a 26.2% increase in just 1 year. In the 12 months to December 2025, over 6,200 New South Wales-based businesses entered insolvencies. These closures have resulted in job losses, high levels of stress and anxiety, and residents lining up in record numbers of food banks, including in my electorate. We see it every single day. And what is the Albanese Labor government doing? Their response has been to spend some more, fueling inflationary pressure rather than tackling it, pushing more money into the economy without addressing the root cause of price increases. Australians did not vote for repeated economic pain. They want real leadership, targeted relief on essentials, genuine support for small businesses, and a plan to bring skyrocketing inflation down without wrecking household budgets. This cost of living crisis demands more than spin, it demands real answers, and the Albanese Labor government have shown time and time again they just don't have any.
I call the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I want to extend my thanks and appreciation to Tamil Festival Australia for another incredible year with a fantastic event held in Melbourne just a few weeks ago. The spirit of Thai Pongal, a harvest festival, and its values of gratitude, community, hope and renewal truly shone through as we came together at Caribbean Park in January, which has been designated Tamil Heritage Month. These themes are more important than ever. With an incredible turnout year on year, great music, delicious food, and a wonderful sharing of cultures, I'm always very humbled to be invited to join in the festivities. I want to wish Chisholm's and Victoria's Tamil community good health and happiness for the rest of 2026, and I look forward to seeing you all throughout the year and next year for another celebration of Thai Pongal. It's been a very busy time in the electorate of Chisholm, Deputy Speaker, and last Saturday I had the great pleasure of welcoming Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Anne Ali, to the New Century School in Wheelers Hill. We met with teachers, students and the people who do such vital work in our community through our community language schools. Community language schools are really important across communities right across the nation, connecting young Australians to the languages of their parents, grandparents and their communities, and strengthening the multicultural fabric which makes Australia such a wonderful place to live. Indeed, I'm someone who attended a language school on a Saturday morning as a child, Italian school in the local area, and that really helped me to understand my mother's culture and connect to her language and culture, as well as through my engagement with the broader community. In an increasingly diverse global market, strengthening community language education sets young Australians up for the future, opening many doors of opportunity for them. We want every child to have the best start in life, and part of that is recognising the importance of community language schools. That's why our government is investing $25.6 million to support more than 600 community language schools right across the country, helping more than 90,000 students learn 84 languages. This includes the New Century School, which has been teaching its students Chinese since the year 2000. Chisholm has one of the largest Chinese communities in Australia, and its strength is underpinned by language schools like the New Century School, which helps students feel a part of a welcoming and inclusive Australia. I want to convey my thanks to the New Century School for having Minister Ali and myself visit, and I look forward to continuing to work with the New Century School and all of the community language schools in Chisholm. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I call the member for Flinders.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Early this week I had the great joy of meeting Year 6 students from my electorate. The girls from Toorak College came with open and curious minds. Among their many questions came why I sought to be a parliamentarian, and I told them the story of my first visit to Parliament House when I was 8 with my mum. It was love at first sight. One might say maths, the democracy edition. I stuffed my bag with all the parliamentary education brochures and learnt all the names of the Prime Ministers. And this week I explained to the girls how great the responsibility is to stand here and contribute to how this nation looks and works, not just today and tomorrow, but for their future. It is those girls and the millions like them who must be front of mind while we occupy these benches on all sides. On weeks like this, it is easy to get lost in the beating drum of politics. Social media has no off switch in the 24-hour news cycle, and an increasingly unpredictable political landscape require that each of us be even more mindful of not getting lost in the fury. We are but 6 weeks into 2026, a year which started mourning the loss of life at Bondi. Severe bushfires weaved through the Victorian countryside, in between cyclones, flash flooding and heat waves. And last week, the Reserve Bank raised interest rates, squeezing pockets. Many look at the year ahead with a degree of real fear and uncertainty. But a different future is possible. In March, when students set off on their Easter holidays, they may just spend more time with their family and friends, not the persistent consumers of endless online content, but instead maybe outdoors, the result of a bipartisan commitment to limiting social media for those under the age of 16. We in this place agreed that the wellbeing and mental health of our young people was above politics. In May, who knows, the Treasurer might have the opportunity to limit the surging repetitive spending that's been fuelling inflation. Executed properly, his budget could halt the predicted series of rate rises which have been eating away at family budgets. And in November, we could finally see a change of government in Victoria, a fresh start for our state, led by a team who are eager to rebrand Victoria as a place worth investing in again, as opposed to further cementing our status as the nation's most indebted and high-taxing jurisdiction. And finally, for the days between each of these milestones, imagine that we make a clear case to Australians which restores trust across our institutions. A sustainable budget that avoids us falling down a cliff of intergenerational inequality, preventing interest on debt from being the dominant budget item. Evidence that we are helping aspiring Australians to buy a home of their own, not complicating or deferring that timeline. Because when you think about it, our time on these benches is not about us. It's about those students that I spent Tuesday morning with and the many like them who are counting on us to do a better job.
I call the Minister for Skills and Training.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Affordable healthcare is one of the critical ways in which we in the Albanese Labor government are delivering real cost of living relief for every single Australian. And it's now been just over a month since we slashed the price of PBS-listed medicines to just $25, $7.70 for concession card holders as well. And the result of this is pretty simple but fundamentally important. Millions of Australians are now paying less for the medicines they rely on every day, including thousands across those communities that I'm so proud to represent. And why have we done this? We believe fundamentally that every Australian should be able to get the medicines they need without worrying about whether or not they can afford it. They shouldn't have to choose between their healthcare and other cost of living pressures. And similarly, Deputy Speaker, it is our fundamental belief as the party of Medicare that people should be able to see a GP for free. And thanks to the investments we've been making into bulk billing, the beating heart of Medicare, this is now a reality. These rates were in freefall thanks to a decade of neglect and underinvestment under the Coalition. But we've reversed that trend, and thanks to our record investments in bulk billing incentives, residents in the Scullin electorate now have 23 bulk billing GP clinics to choose from, up from just 11 before the investment. This is tangible evidence of the real difference our policies are making to the lives of every Australian. Now, last month, many Australians, of course, participated in a wide range of Australia Day activities. It's a day that means different things to different people, as the Assistant Minister here well knows. For some, it's spent at many citizenship ceremonies celebrating our very newest Australians. For others, it's a day to reflect on what it means to be Australian. And this year, I was so pleased to attend an event hosted by the Unity Libyan Youth Australian Association, events supported by our government, showing first and second generation Australians coming together to demonstrate their pride in our country and our shared cultures. I was so proud of the work of Ines Ahmed and the wider Libyan community for inviting me along to learn about them, to learn about their culture, to learn about their pride in Australia and the journey they are on, making our country even better. And Deputy Speaker, we spent a bit of time recognising people in this place, as we should. I want to talk briefly about a friend of mine who has never sought recognition or any accolades. My friend David Layden, who is about to retire from a lifetime of service to the Australian Services Union. David is an extraordinary human being who's given so much in many aspects of life, in particular to the mighty Burnley CYMS Cricket Club. David has also been an absolute stalwart of the Australian Labor Party and particularly the union movement. He is our movement at its very, very best. someone who has never asked for anything and always sought to make a difference to the lives of others, in their workplace, in their community and more broadly. Thanks for everything, Dave.
I call the member for Barker.
Mr Speaker, I rise today to speak on behalf of wine grape growers across Barker who are facing a deep and widening crisis that demands urgent government action. This is not a short-term downturn, it's not a cyclical correction, it's not a problem that can be solved with a bigger marketing spend or recycled announcements. Global wine consumption is in free fall. It fell by 3.5 billion litres between 2022 and 2025, with consumption set to decline by a further 1 billion litres this year. Yet Australia continues to produce far too much wine and the market can't absorb it. The result is chronic and structural oversupply, collapsing prices and growing pressure on growers who have done everything asked of them and still can't make the numbers stack up. The impact is being felt acutely across the Riverland, the Barossa, the Limestone Coast, anywhere that has wine grapes. Behind every vineyard, of course, there's a family carrying a heavy emotional and financial burden. That toll has grown with every season of delay, and many are now at breaking point. If government continues to look the other way, the cost of inaction will not disappear. It will show up in abandoned vineyards, business failures, job losses, long-term decline in regional communities like those I represent. So what can government do? Well, the Australian Grape and Wine's pre-budget submission released last week represents a clear and responsible call for action from an industry under extraordinary pressure. It's not a wish list, it's not a plea for handouts, and it's an industry-led proposal from growers who understand the reality they're facing and are asking governments to confront it with honesty. The submission calls for structural reform and support for orderly adjustments by helping growers who need to exit the industry to do so with dignity, assist those who want to transition to alternative crops or new enterprises, and critically ensuring access to financial counselling and targeted mental health supports for growers and their families who are carrying the emotional burden. These are practical and responsible solutions to a structural problem that individual growers didn't create and, quite frankly, they can't fix alone. The message from the industry is clear. The evidence is clear. The solutions are on the table. What's missing is not ideas or capacity, it's political will to act. Government must heed this warning and act now, before more families and regions push past the point of no return. And when it comes to political will, Labor priorities are unmistakable. In recent months, Labor has committed more than $2.4 billion in joint state and federal funding to prop up the Whyalla Steelworks, with further taxpayer funding flowing to the industry at Port Pirie. By contrast, the entire Australian grape and wine structural reform package will cost around $140 million over 3 years. That's a fraction of the billions of dollars Labor has appropriately put towards the unionised Australian steelworkers. Yet wine grape growers who sustain regional communities, employ thousands of Australians and build an industry over generations are being told to suck it up and fail quietly. This isn't good enough. We need those opposite to rise to this challenge. It's not just union workforces that matter.
I call the Assistant Minister to the Prime Minister, Public Service, Employment and Workplace Relations.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. For more than half a century, the Australian honours system has been a proud national tradition. Our own honours to recognise our own Australians and their outstanding achievements. For 51 years, we have, on Australia Day and the King's birthday, recognised those who do us all proud as Australians. And as the Minister responsible for honours policy and someone who has the privilege of sitting on the Council for the Order of Australia, I want to acknowledge all outstanding Australians who were honoured in those awards, but I also, as the member for Perth, want to recognise those constituents who now get to wear that pin proudly, recognising their outstanding contributions to Australia. I acknowledge Cecil Black as a member of the Order of Australia, a lawyer who has contributed so much to the community, not just in Western Australia, but in the Northern Territory as well. Diane Winnerden, who is now a member of the Order of Australia. She's a professor at Curtin University's School of Nursing and Midwifery and Paramedicine, and she's got an outstanding record in her work as a mental health nurse. David Denver, who is now recipient of the Medal of the Order of Australia, who has dedicated so much of his life to the Jewish community in Perth, including through Maccabee, helping young people form connection. James, or Jim Morrison as we know him, with the Medal of the Order of Australia. He founded Yokai, the WA Stolen Generations Aboriginal Corporation. He's a recipient of the John Curtin Medal. He's a patron of the Pride Parade, and he's an outstanding Western Australian. Walter Maguire, OAM. Now, Walter is an incredible Indigenous leader. He's got a tourism business that has helped so many experience Aboriginal culture, and I also get the joy of seeing him at the City of Bayswater and City of Vincent for their citizenship ceremonies. Ken Gibbons, Medal of the Order of Australia. He founded Movies by Burswood that has raised some $10 million for WA charities. Barry Maguire, who's received the Medal of the Order of Australia. Barry's art can be seen at Optus Stadium. He keeps people safe through the work that he does through Red Spear. You can see his artistry through the production of Swan Lake with the WA Symphony Orchestra, and I was really honoured to have Barry at my very first campaign launch where he gave a welcome to country. Andrew Brostek, OAM, a private practitioner who spent more than 20 years helping with dentistry and helping people get the care they need, including outstanding charity work. Jill Cameron, OAM, 50 years contributing to education, especially for younger Australians. Simone van der Sleurs, APM, receiving the Police Medal for service that started back in 1995. Donald O'Leary, Emergency Services Medal, 37 years of service. And Wendy Casey, Public Service Medal, who has done outstanding work through the Department of Health. Congratulations to all.
In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded, and I call the clerk for the next order of business.
Government business, next order of the day, Treasury Laws Amendment, Supporting Choice in Superannuation and Other Measures Bill 2025, resumption of debate on the second reading and on the amendment moved by the member for Wentworth to the amendment moved by the member for Fairfax.
And I call the member for Brisbane in continuation.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This bill is another step in strengthening a system that delivers on its purpose of providing income for a dignified retirement. Now, Schedule 1 to the bill amends the Superannuation Guarantee Administration Act to streamline the super choice of funds process during employee onboarding. And when starting a new job, Australians deserve to know their options and make informed choices about their super fund. Stapling has also been introduced to ensure employers pay superannuation contributions to an employee's existing super fund if that employee doesn't make a choice. Now, if an employee doesn't make a choice of fund, their employer can request the stapled fund details from the ATO. And this really prevents employees unintentionally opening new super accounts every time they start a new job. It also supports our government's commitment to empower employees to make informed decisions, informed choices, by making it easier for them to see, consider and select their existing super fund when they start a new job, if that's what they choose to do. To be clear though, as under existing choice of fund rules, the employees will still be able to choose any available super fund. Now, this amendment also supports our government's commitment to reduce unintended duplicate accounts, which can erode savings over time, as we all know, with duplicate fees or extra insurance premiums. You know, Deputy Speaker, I look around at my young sons and their friends and, you know, they're starting work, and I guarantee you their superannuation fund is not top of mind for them. And it's really easy when changing jobs, I think, to lose track of things like your super and inadvertently open another fund, especially when it's dropped in front of you when you're signing, you know, many papers for a new job. And while you've got 101 things going on in your mind, you may even be a bit nervous. So these changes will also give employers, though, more timely and accurate superannuation details, supporting their readiness for our government's payday super reforms. Now, Schedule 2 to the bill amends the Corporations Act 2001 to impose a ban on advertising superannuation products to employees during onboarding, but with certain exceptions. And again, Australians deserve protection from inappropriate advertising when they provide their superannuation details to an employer when onboarding. Now, this is a key moment for employees when they start work, and they should be able to engage with their super in a safe and informed way and free of inappropriate pressure or product promotions. There was a review called Your Future, Your Super, Your Future, Your Super, and that uncovered some inappropriate behaviour where software providers were undermining stapling and directing employees to advertising products, including those associated with the software provider. Now, our government really wants to put a stop to that inappropriate behaviour, and this amendment introduces a ban on advertising super products to an employee, specifically at the point of onboarding when starting a new job, as I've said before. And the following exceptions will apply so that only certain types of superannuation products can be shown or advertised to employees. The Employee Super Fund, the Employer's Default Fund, My Super products that meet the following conditions. First, they have to pass the annual superannuation performance test. Second, the person advertising the product is not related to the super fund that is offering the product, pretty important. Third, the person advertising the My Super product has requested an employee's stapled fund and provides those details to the employee if available. And finally, the advertisement is accompanied by clear and unambiguous disclosures. Now, for clarity, My Super Fund products are default superannuation products which are subject to strict regulation and an annual performance test. And the condition to show an employee their stapled fund is an important consumer protection that will provide the necessary information to make a better informed decision. Now, the ban does not apply to a person advertising in the ordinary course of business, just for clarity. Now, our government consulted with stakeholders on this amendment and there was broad support for the changes and, importantly, an understanding of the benefits that superannuation stapling brings to reducing unintended duplicate accounts. By requiring stapling as a condition of advertising a My Super product while onboarding, the bill really strikes a pretty decent balance. It gives employees as much transparency as possible while providing flexibility for service providers to ensure their systems are ready and aligns with the implementation of Payday Super. These amendments reinforce our government's commitment to supporting Australians to make informed choices about their superannuation while providing strong consumer protection. It will protect employees from unduly influenced and to make uninformed decisions. Under the existing choice of fund rules, employees will still be able to choose any available super fund. And these reforms build on our government's broader work to strengthen super. We've legislated the purpose of super, lifting the super guarantee to 12%, boosting the low-income super tax offset and paying superannuation on paid parental leave. We have implemented major reforms to ensure funds deliver for their members, from the financial accountability regime to stronger reporting standards and expanding the performance test from around 80 products to more than 800. Now let's move on to some other matters in the bill. In Australia, we love our sport. It's part of our national identity. And Schedule 3 provides targeted tax exemptions to help Australia host the Men and Women's Rugby Cup in 2027 and 2029. Now, these games aren't just two events on a calendar. They're part of a long national tradition of hosting sports that brings people together. World Rugby chose Australia in 2022 for a good reason. We are a country that competes. The Men and Women's World Cups will draw hundreds of thousands of international visitors, which will boost local tourism. It'll pack our hotels, it'll fill up our pubs and restaurants, pack out our stadiums and showcase Australia on the world stage in the lead up to the Brisbane Olympics in 2032. Now, hosting the Rugby World Cup will generate jobs. It'll deliver long-term benefits to local communities, including increased participation in sport, especially among women and girls. The amendments will provide income tax exemptions for event delivery companies and joint venture partners, and there'll be a withholding tax exemption for certain payments to foreign entities up to 30 June 2031. Now, these settings align with what's been put in place previously for other major global sporting events hosted here, including the famous 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup. They're critical to ensuring Australia remains competitive and an attractive destination for global events. Moving on to Schedule 4 of the bill, which puts Australia's new tax treaty with Portugal into law, adding to the attractiveness of Australia as an investment destination. This is actually the first agreement of its kind between our countries, and it opens the door to deeper commercial, investment and innovation links by cutting withholding tax rates on dividends, interest and royalties. It means fewer tax barriers, cheaper access to foreign capital and stronger incentives for Australian and Portuguese businesses to invest. Deputy Speaker, this helps strengthen our tax integrity. And finally, the Convention supports the government's plan to make multinationals pay their fair share of tax and strengthens again the integrity of the tax system. It helps prevent tax evasion and avoidance by providing mechanisms for tax authorities to exchange information and to provide assistance in the collection of tax debts. Exchange of information is very important in that regard. Schedule 5 to the bill amends the income tax laws to specifically list 11 entities as deductible gift recipients. I won't read them all, but a couple worth I'll mention are the Community Foundations Australia and the Partnerships for Local Action and Community Empowerment. But specifically listing an organisation encourages philanthropic giving and supports our not-for-profit sectors, as donors may claim income tax deductions for donations to organisations with deductible gift recipient status. To maintain the trust and integrity of the deductible gift recipient system, the schedule also removes those entities that have either voluntarily asked to be removed or no longer operate for the purposes of which they were originally provided the DGR status. Now, the last schedule to the bill relates to wine. In Australia, we love a good drop and we have some of the best wines in the world, some of them not too far from here. And Schedule 6 delivers on the Albanese government's 25-26 budget commitment to provide tax relief for Australian wine producers. Currently, all eligible wine products can receive a rebate of wine equalisation tax of up to about $350,000. The changes this bill introduces increases that cap to $400,000 per financial year from 1 July 2026. And we didn't stop at wine, Deputy Speaker. Through regulations, we're making matching changes for brewers and distillers too. From 1 July, the excise remission cap for eligible alcohol manufacturers will rise from $350,000 to $400,000 a year for beer and spirits entered for home consumption. So that keeps wine, beer and spirits all in step. Together, these changes back our local producers. They keep money flowing through our regional towns. They support jobs, they support investment. So I'd say cheers to that, Deputy Speaker, and I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you. And for clarity, members, the original question was that this bill now be read a second time. To this, the honourable member for Fairfax moved as an amendment that all words after that be omitted with the view to substituting other words. The honourable member for Wentworth has moved as an amendment to that amendment that all words after whilst be omitted with a view to substituting other words. And the question is that the amendment moved by the honourable member for Wentworth to the amendment moved by the honourable member for Fairfax be agreed to. I call the member for Griffith.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In Griffith, people change jobs often. A hospitality worker picking up extra shifts along Boundary Street, a nurse moving between hospitals, a tradie starting as a new subcontractor in Woolloongabba, a graduate launching their career with a new tertiary degree or TAFE qualification. And every time that happens, a very ordinary human admin moment comes around again, the dreaded onboarding forms. For most workers, this is the key moment where their super is set up for a new job. But if they are rushed, if the information is unclear, or if the process is cluttered with product promotion, they can be steered into decisions they did not really make. They can end up with a new account they don't need, paying duplicate fees and insurance, and watching their retirement savings erode in the background. Workers deserve better. They deserve to be properly informed, to clearly see their existing stapled fund, to understand their options, and to make genuine choice that fits their circumstances, because it is their money and it is their retirement. That is exactly what this bill is really about, making sure people, working people, keep more of what they earn so that they can retire with dignity. Deputy Speaker, Schedules 1 and 2 go to the heart of fairness in the superannuation system, ensuring workers and their interests are always put first in onboarding processes related to super. We introduced stapling to stop people being defaulted into a brand new account every time they start a new job. It's a simple idea. Your existing fund can follow you unless you choose otherwise. And it matters because duplicate accounts mean duplicate fees, duplicate insurance, and lower balances ultimately at the time of retirement. Schedule 1 strengthens that protection by streamlining the choice of fund process during onboarding. It gives employers more flexibility to request an employee's stapled fund details earlier, so the employee can actually see their existing fund during the onboarding process, consider it, and then make an informed choice. That's not taking choice away, it's quite the opposite. It's making choice real because people cannot choose what they cannot see. And it also helps employers do the right thing. It gives them more timely and accurate information, and that is especially important as we move towards payday super, where super is paid alongside wages, not months later. Payday super is about making sure workers are paid what they are owed when they are owed it. These reforms help the system get ready to deliver that change smoothly. Schedule 2 of the bill deals with the creeping commercialisation of onboarding. A 22-23 review of the Your Future, Your Super reforms found that some onboarding software providers were being paid to advertise super products, sometimes products associated with the provider, right at the moment when a worker is trying to start a new job and get their paperwork in order. Deputy Speaker, that's not informed consent, that's just sales and marketing. Schedule 2 introduces a targeted ban on superannuation advertising during onboarding with sensible exemptions so that workers can still see their stapled fund, the employer default fund, and in limited circumstances, certain regulated MySuper products with strong disclosure requirements. That is exactly where consumer protection belongs, and it will go a long way in protecting the superannuation of all workers across Australia. Changes like these keep the focus where it should be, on transparency, on informed choice, and on the workers' interests, not on marketing. Deputy Speaker, these onboarding reforms are part of our government's larger set of changes to fix unpaid super and strengthen confidence in the system, and payday super is central to that. In December last year, the ATO released new data revealing $1.1 billion in unpaid super had been returned to nearly 1 million individual super funds in 24-25. That's money that people earned, it was hard earned, but they did not originally receive. And unpaid super does not fall evenly. It disproportionately affects younger workers and people in insecure work, many of them who live in my area of Griffith. The very workers least able to absorb the loss and are least likely to have the time or the power to be able to chase it up. We have unfortunately seen what this looks like in our communities. It looks like younger workers in hospitality, juggling shifts, trying to pay rent, assuming everything has been paid properly, only to find out years later that it was not. It looks like someone changing jobs, not even realising they have missing contributions until the debt is too old or the business is folded. We also know that impact compounds because super is built on time. When contributions are missing, workers do not lose that contribution. They not only lose that contribution, they lose the investment earnings on top of it. From 1 July this year, employers will be required to pay superannuation guarantee contributions at the same time as wages instead of quarterly. And contributions will need to be received by the employee's super fund within a shorter window after payday, so workers can more easily track what they are owed and the ATO can detect missing payments earlier before debts become unrecoverable. The system is also being modernised to ensure consequences match the harm when employers do not pay on time. That is why Schedules 1 and 2 are so important. If we're asking the system to move to payday super, then onboarding processes must be clean, transparent and worker-focused. We cannot have a system where super is paid more frequently, but workers are still being nudged into unnecessary new accounts or pushed past information that would help them to make a good, genuine decision and choice. Deputy Speaker, Schedule 3 provides targeted income tax and withholding tax exemptions for the World Rugby and Rugby Australia, strictly limited to income directly related to delivering Rugby World Cups. This approach follows established precedent for other major international events hosted here. And it matters for the legacy we leave: jobs, tourism, local participation, and especially a lift in opportunities for women and girls in sport as the women's tournaments approach. Deputy Speaker, Schedule 5 of the bill matters deeply to me and to communities like Griffith because it speaks to the strength of Australia's not-for-profit sector and the quiet generosity that underpins it. For a couple of decades before entering this place, I worked in the charities sector in Australia, leading national charities. So this is in particular important to me and, of course, important to the sector and the donors who part with their hard-earned money to support the causes. Deductible gift recipient, or DGR, listing is valuable for fundraising, a practical lever that helps organisations attract public support for work that benefits the community, including Equality Australia, one of the many incredible organisations that will be listed for DGR status under this bill. Equality Australia is doing work that is often complex and behind the scenes. Detailed law reform, careful policy development and sustained advocacy to close gaps that still leave LGBTQIA+ people exposed to discrimination or harm. For organisations like Equality Australia, fundraising is critical to ensure they can keep the lights on, and the listing for DGR status will bolster their efforts. Deputy Speaker, before coming into this place, I sat on the board of the Fundraising Institute of Australia, so I have particular experiences and insights into just how much DGR status can help these charities and organisations and non-profits. In practice, DGR status encourages the community to support the work of these organisations, which in turn helps organisations plan further ahead, invest in staff and expertise, and respond quickly when the community needs them, whether that is preparing submissions, supporting campaigns, or turning lived experience into concrete reform proposals. It strengthens not only their financial base, but also their long-term stability that allows them to keep showing up year after year for the people they serve. In a community like mine in Brisbane, that work really matters. It helps make sure people can participate in community life without fear, and it strengthens the basic Australian promise that everyone should be treated with fairness and with respect. And Deputy Speaker, I want to make special mention of another organisation that will be listed for DGR status under this bill, the Parenthood Project. In Griffith, we are absolutely a community of families, including parents, juggling cost of living pressures, the childcare wait list, the scramble of drop-off and pick-up, and the constant effort to give kids the best chances and a good start. The Parenthood's work is squarely in that lived reality. The Parenthood is an advocacy organisation working to make Australia the best place in the world to be a parent, backed by a national community of more than 80,000 parents and carers. And as the CEO, Georgie Dent, shared with me, DGR status is a game changer for the Parenthood. It recognises the vital public benefit of our work to make Australia the best place in the world to be a parent and raise a child. It's a vote of confidence in the power of parents to help build a fairer, more equitable Australia. And that's the point, Deputy Speaker. When we make it easier for Australians to support the organisations delivering real public benefit, we strengthen the fabric of our community. Deputy Speaker, this bill brings together a set of practical measures that speak to the kind of economy and community we want to build. It strengthens how superannuation works at the moments that matter, so workers are informed, protected from inappropriate sales pressure, and better placed to keep more of what they earn for retirement. It honours Australia's commitments as a host of major international sporting events with clear, targeted and time-limited tax settings that help deliver the Rugby World Cups and the jobs, tourism and participation legacy that can flow from them. And it builds on the strength of our not-for-profit sector by extending deductible gift recipient status to organisations that continue to deliver immeasurable public benefit, helping them to fundraise, to plan and keep showing up for the communities that they serve.
And the question is that the amendment moved by the honourable member for Wentworth to the amendment moved by the honourable member for Fairfax be agreed to, and I call the member for Aston.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Treasury Law Amendment supporting choice and superannuation and other measures Bill 2025. Deputy Speaker, without a doubt, Labor is the party of superannuation. This bill is yet another step that our government has taken to strengthen a system that delivers on its purpose of providing income for a dignified retirement. Schedule 1 streamlines the choice of fund process so workers can see and consider their existing stapled fund when they start a new job. This will help reduce duplicate accounts that erode retirement savings through unnecessary fees and insurance premiums. The Albanese Labor government is of the strong belief that Australians deserve to make an informed choice about their superannuation. Earlier access to stapled fund details means employees can make that choice with confidence, and employers have the right information to support our government's payday super reforms. Schedule 2 introduces a targeted ban on superannuation advertising during onboarding. This is a key moment for employees, and they should be able to engage with their super in a safe and informed way, free from inappropriate pressure or product promotion. Limited exceptions ensure workers can still see their stapled fund, the employer's default fund, or a regulated MySuper product, keeping the focus on transparency, not sales tactics. These reforms build on our government's broader work to strengthen super, legislating the purpose of super, lifting the super guarantee to 12%, boosting the low-income super tax offset, or LISTO as it's become known, and paying super on paid parental leave. The Albanese Labor government has implemented major reforms to ensure funds deliver for their members, from the financial accountability regime to stronger reporting standards, to expanding the performance test from around 80 products to more than 800. Together with Payday Super, these reforms will help make sure Australians earn more, keep more of what they earn, and retire with more. Deputy Speaker, the comparison could not be clearer. Those opposite every time they were elected to government, going back to the Howard years, delayed the super guarantee and undermined the foundations of our world-class retirement system. However, on this side of the House, our government is strengthening superannuation and making it more sustainable so it can deliver a decent retirement for Australian workers. This government is proud of Australia's superannuation system. We are especially proud of its history, particularly our industry super, how the Labor movement fought for a fair retirement system for all workers, and how the Labor Party brought superannuation to all workers via the super guarantee back in the early 1990s. That was when I began my working career. So it was not just the upper echelons of corporates, the senior managers and CEOs who benefited from superannuation anymore. Oh no. Our super system has been our best financial success story, the envy of the world. You know who else we are proud of? The many workers around this country that our super supports. And I am proud to be a part of a government that is ensuring it continues to deliver for generations to come. So Schedule 1, employee onboarding reform. So Schedule 1 to the bill amends the Superannuation Guarantee Administration Act 1992 to streamline the superannuation choice of fund process during employee onboarding. Australians deserve to make an informed choice about their superannuation fund when they start a new job. This amendment provides greater flexibility for employers or their agents to request an employee's existing stapled fund details from the ATO earlier in the onboarding process. That way, if a stapled fund exists, the employer can provide those details to the employee during onboarding to help inform their choice of fund. This amendment supports the government's commitment to empower employees to make informed choices by making it easier to see, consider and select their existing super fund when they start a new job, if they choose to do so. This will reduce unintended duplicate accounts, which can erode retirement savings through duplicate fees and insurance premiums. Duplicate fees add up and can mean thousands and thousands of lost retirement earnings over years of a worker's career. This will give employers more timely and accurate superannuation details, supporting their readiness for the government's payday super reforms. And Schedule 2, so that's the ban on advertising superannuation funds during onboarding. Schedule 2 to the bill amends the Corporations Act 2001 to impose a ban on advertising superannuation products to employees during onboarding, with certain exceptions, of course. Australians deserve protection from inappropriate advertising when they provide their superannuation details to an employer during the onboarding process. This amendment introduces a ban on advertising superannuation products to an employee, specifically at the point of employee onboarding when starting a new job. This is a key moment when employees engage with their superannuation and should be able to do so in an informed and safe way. Exceptions will be available for showing employees their stapled fund, the employer's default fund and certain MySuper products, which are subject to strict regulation. This amendment reinforces the government's commitment to supporting Australians to make an informed choice about their superannuation, while also providing strong consumer protections. It will protect employees from being unduly influenced to make uninformed decisions, open inappropriate products and unintentionally create duplicate accounts. And Schedule 3, income tax and withholding tax exemption for the Rugby World Cups. Schedule 3 delivers on our commitments and honours Australia's obligations to World Rugby as part of our successful bid to host the 2027 Men's and Women's 2029 Rugby World Cups. It ensures we remain a trusted and competitive host for major international sporting events. The tax exemptions are strictly limited to income directly related to the delivery of the events and apply only between the 1st of July 2023 and 30th of June 2031. This is not a blanket exemption, it is a focus measure with clear boundaries. Hosting both these Rugby World Cups will generate jobs, boost tourism and deliver long-term benefits to local communities, including increased participation in sport, especially among women and girls. Similar exemptions were provided for the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup and the 2020 ICC T20 World Cup. This measure follows a well-established approach to supporting international sporting events in Australia. This measure fulfils Australia's commitments to World Rugby as part of our successful bid to host the 2027 and 2029 Rugby World Cups. These events are part of Australia's broader sporting legacy, leading into the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. This measure helps ensure their success and maximises their national impact. Schedule 4, the Portuguese Convention. Schedule 4 of this bill amends the International Tax Agreements Act 1953 to give force of law to the tax convention between Australia and Portugal, which was signed on 30th of November 2023. This convention is the first of its kind between Australia and Portugal and will provide avenues to support closer bilateral linkages with Portugal, particularly in the areas of commercial trade, investment and innovation. It will do so by reducing withholding tax rates on dividends, interest and royalties, which will reduce tax disincentives to investment and the cost of business of accessing foreign capital. The convention will also reduce compliance costs for taxpayers and improve certainty for individuals and businesses that have dealings in Australia and in Portugal by determining the allocation of profits from cross-border dealings between the two countries. The convention will add to the attractiveness of Australia as an investment destination. Finally, the convention supports the government's plan to make multinationals pay their fair share of tax and strengthens the integrity of the tax system. It helps prevent tax evasion and avoidance by providing mechanisms for the tax authorities to exchange information and provide assistance in the collection of tax debts. Schedule 5, deductible gift recipients specific listings. Schedule 5 to the bill refers to deductible gift recipients specific listings, which encourages philanthropic giving and supports the not-for-profit sector as donors may claim income tax deductions for donations to organisations with DGR status. Removal of specific listings is necessary to maintain trust and integrity in the administration of tax concessions that can be accessed for not-for-profit that have DGR status. And finally, Schedule 6, increased wine equalisation tax producer rebate. Schedule 6 to the bill will increase support for wine producers under the existing wine equalisation tax producer rebate scheme from the 1st of July 2026 by increasing the rebate cap of $350,000 to $400,000 per financial year. Schedule 6 will support approximately 3,000 wine producers. Deputy Speaker, this is evidence of, yet again, our government taking strong action to strengthen superannuation and to ensure that it delivers on its purpose of providing income for a dignified retirement. And I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the amendment be moved by the Honourable Member for Wentworth to the amendment moved by the Honourable Member for Fairfax be agreed to, and I call the member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's great to see you up there in the chair, and look forward to addressing the chair as we talk about this TLAB. Obviously lots of schedules, but I'll be focusing, as you would expect from a Labor Member of Parliament, on our wonderful reforms to super, not only located in this bill here today, but also more broadly, because here on this side of the House, as a Labor government, we recognise that superannuation is one of the most significant economic reforms ever undertaken in this country. It's not, for us, it's not a side policy or a nice to have. For Labor, super isn't an optional extra. We see it as a central pillar of how Australians can fund a dignified retirement after a lifetime at work. It's about fairness, and it's about ensuring that people have that dignified retirement after working so hard. For most Australians, Deputy Speaker, superannuation is their second largest asset after their home, and it represents decades of effort, sacrifice and contribution. And because super is compulsory, because Australians cannot opt out, governments carry a serious responsibility to ensure that the system works fairly, transparency, and in the interests of its members. Not for profit, not for others to jump into this and take it when they need it, but it's got to work well for the members. And so we have that responsibility as the government that members get the maximum they can from this world-class retirement system. We built superannuation, but we've always understood that just building it's not enough. It's not just a set and forget. Like most things, it needs to be maintained, it needs to be strengthened, and it needs to be modernised as the economy changes, as work changes, and as the risks facing workers evolve. This bill is a practical example of that theory, Deputy Speaker. Reforms in this bill are targeted, they're sensible, and they, I guess, improve the experience for how Australians engage with their super at one of the most important moments in their working lives, and that, of course, is when you start a new job. These reforms improve that experience in a way that supports informed choice, stronger consumer protection, and ultimately better retirement outcomes. In Bennelong, we see clearly why the design of superannuation and the design of the system why it matters. Bennelong has lower median super balances than the state and national average, and where you do have lower balances, there's less margin for error. When accounts are duplicated, where fees accumulate or contributions go unpaid, the consequences in Bennelong are felt more sharply. The median super member in Bennelong has a lower super balance than New South Wales, with $52,100 as a median balance. This compares to $61,800 in New South Wales and $62,100 in Australia. But also at the same time, Deputy Speaker, many people in Bennelong, like across the country, are approaching their age of retirement after long years working. Their super balances represent decades of steady contribution and, in many cases, some pretty decent gains year on year. Protecting those balances and ensuring every dollar owed is paid and preserved and that accumulation keeps on going is essential. That's why these reforms improve how people engage with super, and importantly, these reforms that we're rolling out now, but also the ones that we've done in this term and seek to do with legislation introduced yesterday, all with the goal of improving retirement outcomes over time. Starting a new job is one of the most common moments when Australians are required to make decisions about their superannuation. It's also one of the moments where people are least equipped to do so. Obviously, you're starting a new job, you're trying to fit in, you've got to go through your work contracts, understand what's going on there, your pay, you're negotiating, hours, you're thinking about probation periods. Superannuation can easily become an afterthought, easily. Even though the consequences of that, we know, can compound over decades if you make the wrong choice. Too often, the result is that super's kind of not considered important, and the result for many new employees at a new job is that they just go with a default fund of the employer, which may or may not match with their fund that they've got, and it duplicates these accounts. You duplicate account fees, you duplicate insurance policies, and what happens is workers lose money through those fees because they've opened unnecessary accounts. I don't think that's a failure of individual responsibility. There's a lot going on when you start a new job, particularly if you've moved town or if it's your first job. I think there's things that can happen with the system design that can make that experience a lot easier and a lot better. And that's what Schedule 1 of this bill does, Deputy Speaker. It reforms the employee onboarding process to ensure that workers can see and consider their existing stapled superannuation fund earlier at the point where they're making decisions about their employment arrangements. So stapling means that when a worker starts a new job, their superannuation account is stapled to them and follows them from employer to employer, unless they actively choose a different fund, which of course is an important aspect of what we believe super to be. Super choice is really important. So stapling was introduced to stop people unintentionally opening a new super account every time. It was an important first step, but what we're seeing is that when employees onboard, obviously nowadays usually in an electronic onboarding system where you go online and you fill out all your details, is that fund, that stapled fund, is not being displayed at the point of onboarding. And that means that it kind of goes around the intent of what stapling was designed to do. This amendment provides greater flexibilities for employers or their agents to request an employee's stapled fund details from the ATO earlier in the onboarding process rather than months later or by paper forms, as what sometimes happens. And so if the stapled fund exists, then those details are provided at the time that they're filling out that super choice form. Obviously, with the rollout of electronic payroll systems, single-touch payroll, with the ATO playing the role they play in superannuation compliance, and with Payday Super coming in, it should be pretty easy for those software providers to update their coding so that they can chat to the ATO, get that detail right at the time when they need to fill out their super choice form so that the employers know where they pay their super. This will mean workers can make an informed decision. It reduces the risks astronomically of duplicate accounts, and it ensures that employers have accurate information rather than just defaulting to the employer's default fund. And importantly, Deputy Speaker, as I said earlier, this reform doesn't limit choice. Employees, as they should be, they have the right to choose any super fund they wish. They can open a new one, they can make sure their super payments go in their stapled fund, or they can go with the employer's default fund as well. Schedule 2 of the bill reforms it even further, and it introduces a targeted ban on advertising superannuation products during employee onboarding. For those that have electronic onboarding, what's found its way into the system is some super funds. I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, they've tried to exploit a loophole here, and what employees are getting advertisements during the onboarding process and enticing them at that critical time, perhaps to go with a product that either doesn't suit them or opening a new fund which may have those issues of duplication and extra fees. Onboarding is a critical decision point, and it's when workers provide sensitive information and make financial decisions. Something like that shouldn't be treated as a marketing opportunity where advertisers seek to take advantage of that decision point and maybe encourage employees not to make the best decision in their interests. So a review of earlier reforms found that onboarding software providers were being paid to advertise superannuation products, often products linked to the provider itself during the onboarding process. We believe that creates a bit of a conflict of interest. This bill cleans that up a bit, bans advertising during onboarding, but allowing sensible and tightly controlled exceptions. Employees will still be able to see their stapled fund, obviously their employer's default fund, and certain MySuper products that must meet strict conditions, including passing the performance tests and being accompanied by clear disclosures. It's about protecting informed choice and for advertisers not taking advantage of the situation where they're onboarding. Obviously, these are 2 more reforms to super, part of a broader, deliberate agenda by the Labor government to strengthen Australia's superannuation system, so it works in the interests of members across their working life. We've legislated the objective of superannuation for the first time with the ultimate aim of preserving savings to deliver income for a dignified retirement, because we saw at every opportunity the Liberals and Nationals try and attack super, erode the concept of that accumulation, their failed policies of super for housing, and then obviously during COVID, making younger workers in particular raid their super just to get by during a worldwide pandemic was just an awful policy by a government that got so much wrong during that COVID response. The impacts of young Australians wiping 20, 30 grand out of their super will be borne not only by them individually, but by the taxpayer when those people come to retirement and have lost tens of thousands of dollars of returns because the Morrison government allowed them to raid their super during a national emergency. That's why we've had to come in and legislate that objective of superannuation for the first time so that the Liberals and Nationals can't unpick it at their whim. The objective provides a clear benchmark against which future changes must be judged. So also, under Labor, the superannuation guarantee has reached 12%. After a long time, Deputy Speaker, it was meant to be 12%, I think in the first term of the Howard government in 1996. It's a long time since 1996, and we finally got to 12% after it was not only delayed by the Howard government, but then also increases were delayed by the Abbott, Morrison and Turnbull government as well. We're also addressing long-standing inequities in the system. Paid parental leave will now be subject to super. We're boosting the low-income superannuation tax offset. My favourite abbreviation, Deputy Speaker, LISTO. Go down the pub, talk about the LISTO. Sounds like something us on this side would say, because it's a great policy, increasing superannuation contributions for our lowest paid workers so they too can have more funds when they need it in retirement. It'll help those on lower incomes, including thousands of workers in Bennelong, our reforms to the LISTO, and it was great to see the Treasurer introduce those reforms in the House this week, Deputy Speaker. At the same time, we're also strengthening accountability and performance. We've expanded the superannuation performance test. We've lifted reporting standards. We've introduced the financial accountability regime to ensure that funds are delivering for their members. We're improving system integrity by requiring super to be paid at the same time as wages, finally, through payday super. And I hope this reform doesn't stop here, Deputy Speaker, because we know that we need to keep on changing super to make sure it's performing for members. The Treasurer also introduced some really important tax concession reform to make super fairer and more sustainable over the long term. I know a great union in the SDA has got a great campaign about getting young people superannuation. If you're under 18, you don't get paid super, which made a lot of sense a long time ago, Deputy Speaker, when superannuation amounts were so small and you had to process payments manually, write a cheque, post it to the super fund, they had to cash that cheque. Made a lot of sense for small super balances, small super amounts not to be paid. But in 2026, with payday super, with electronic methods of super payment, where the cost of transferring money electronically is next to zero, I think the SDA have a very strong case for future reform, obviously to be done by a Labor government, because we know what those opposite do with super. So, Deputy Speaker, I commend this bill to the House and Labor created super, will always stand to protect it.
The question is that the amendment moved by the honourable member for Wentworth to the amendment moved by the honourable member for Fairfax be agreed to, and I call the member for Macon.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it was Labor that introduced super in 1992, and it did so to ensure that all Australian workers could retire with dignity and financial security. And it has been Labor ever since then that has ensured that the superannuation guarantee that was introduced continues to serve Australian workers in the way it was intended to be, and Labor continued to upgrade and refine the superannuation laws so as nobody would miss out. And a good example of that is when it was introduced and applied to people on paid parental leave. Deputy Speaker, contrary to that, we have seen, ever since the superannuation guarantee was introduced, the coalition trying to somehow obstruct the intent of it. And indeed, we not only saw that in the last period of coalition government where the contribution rate was 9.5%, remained that way between 2014 and 2021, but we have since seen several attempts by coalition policies to try and allow people to have access to that super before they were entitled to, which in my view totally undermines the whole purpose of the scheme. The reality is that because of Labor's policies, today there is some $4.3 trillion in superannuation assets held in this country. My understanding is, and this is based on the latest figures I was able to get, that around 2.7 or over 2.7 trillion is in APRA-regulated entities and over $1 trillion is in self-managed funds. Now, Deputy Speaker, these are big numbers, and I understand that Australia has the 4th largest super assets holdings globally of any country, and the way we are going, it may well be that we'll be number 1 in the years ahead. But the importance of super is simply this, that not only does it provide for security and financial stability in retirement years, but it actually reduces the burden on governments in paying pensions for those who don't have superannuation. In fact, right now, Australia is possibly the only country bucking the global trend and spending a smaller proportion of GDP on the pension, whilst other countries are spending more of their GDP on pension payments. So we're going against the trend, all because of the superannuation policies that we have in this country. And Labor's commitment to a sustainable superannuation system is demonstrated with this very legislation. And the legislation has 6 schedules to it. I don't have time to talk about each of the schedules, but I want to talk about 2 of them. And the first is to try and ensure that we ban advertising during onboarding. And in a simplistic way, that's all about trying to ensure that people don't invest their money with funds which are not credible and secure. And we saw that with the collapse of the Shield Master Funds and the First Guardian managed investment schemes, which impacted some 12,000 investors and perhaps up to $1.2 billion of funds. Whilst it appears some of those will be compensated, the future is very uncertain for many others who have lost some or all of their retirement savings and don't know if they will receive compensation. Investors were lured into those funds through being cold called and encouraged to switch from safer, more regulated funds into higher risk, less regulated funds. This highlights just how important it is to ensure that adequate protections are put in place for the types of unscrupulous practices that too often take place. Schedule 2 of the bill places a ban on advertising superannuation funds during an employee's onboarding when starting a new job, with some exceptions. Whilst this doesn't directly address the circumstances that arose in the Shield and Guardian collapse, it does nevertheless deal with the similar type of flaws whereby people may be exploited to make an uninformed choice at short notice amongst all the paperwork and preparation when they start a new job. The second issue that I want to briefly speak about is how this legislation affects the wine tax and, in particular, the wine equalisation tax, which goes from $350,000 to $500,000. Deputy Speaker, these facts can be sourced very easily from the wine industry websites, but just to put this into perspective, let me just go through some of the facts. The wine industry contributes some $51 billion to the Australian economy, supports about 200,000 direct and indirect jobs, contributes to regional tourism with 7.5 million winery visits annually, and Australia is a top 6 global wine producer. 60% of Australian wine is exported. That is 630 million tonnes on the last figures that I was able to get, and over a third of that goes to China. Total production, about 1.57 million tonnes a year. Across Australia, we have 2,156 wineries and some 6,000 grape growers. My home state of South Australia accounts for over 52% of all of that. Right now, the industry is struggling. It's in fact in crisis. An oversupply of wine and a declining domestic and global consumption is causing that. And that's leading to an oversupply where we currently have about 52 million litres in storage. A few years ago, growers were getting something like $600 per tonne for their grapes. Today, they are offered $150 a tonne if they can get a buyer. $150 a tonne doesn't even cover production costs, the cost of water, fertilisers, insecticides, labour costs, etc. And when you add climate change to all that, you understand how difficult it is for some of those growers, which has led to a number of the growers now ripping out good plantations, healthy vines, which, quite frankly, it's a shame to see that happening. And part of the problem that we face right now is that back in 2021, because of the Morrison government stance, China closed its door to Australian wine for 3 years and imposed tariffs of between 116 to 218%. Labor lifted those tariffs in March of 2024, almost exactly 3 years later, and sales have started to pick up. But for 3 years, we had almost no sales whatsoever. Those 3 years of no sales literally account for all of this wine that is now in storage and which can't be sold. Regrettably, even though the markets have reopened, the problem is that China found new places to buy their wine from, and so now getting back to the full amount of wine that was being sold to China before the tariffs were imposed is becoming increasingly difficult. Add to that USA, UK, Hong Kong and Canadian wine sales, which have all declined, and you begin to understand that the wine industry is indeed in crisis. And so I simply say this: raising the wine equalisation tax from $350,000 to $400,000 will make some difference. It's not the silver bullet. It won't cure all the problems, but it will make a difference. And right now, the wine industry across Australia is in desperate need of whatever help it can get. Deputy Speaker, I understand that the chamber will now be adjourning in just a moment, so I won't go on, but I simply stress that point because it's a clear example of the damage done to the wine industry by a bad decision of a government a few years ago, and one that now impacts so many families across Australia.
We're just going to go.
Yep.
A quorum not being present, the Federation Chamber is suspended and will resume when the Chair is resumed.
I now call the member for Macon.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, just before the suspension, I was referring to the increase of the wine equalisation tax producer rebate cap from $350,000 to $400,000 and how that will provide some relief to the wine industry across Australia, which is on its knees at the moment. And I was making the point that the wine industry is struggling right now because of decisions and policies taken by the coalition government under Prime Minister Scott Morrison at the time, and in turn that ended up with China closing its doors to Australian wine for 3 years, whereby there was almost no wine being sold to our previously largest importer of Australian wines. And whilst the producer rebate cap being lifted to $400,000 is important and it will provide some assistance, of course it won't go far enough to help those wine producers and the grape growers who are indeed struggling and right now having to pull out their vines. Just to do that costs them, I understand, around $7,000 a hectare, and then to replant with something else, you might add another $30,000 a hectare to do that. So you can appreciate the financial burden it places on them. Of course, they would be welcoming some additional government support in respect to that, particularly because they find themselves in the position they do because of a previous government's approach. And so I have a great deal of sympathy for those wine growers. The last matter that I will touch on, Deputy Speaker, is simply this, and that is the, I think it's Schedule 4 of this legislation, which talks about the convention that was agreed to between Australia and Portugal, a tax convention that was signed in November 2023, just over 2 years ago. And there's two aspects to this that I think are critical. One, in the global environment we live in, I think it's important to have tax laws that can be used as simply as possible between two different countries, because that in turn enables the flow of free trade so much easier and allows businesses, whether they're in Portugal or here in Australia, to do business without having to have complicated tax arrangements in place. But the more significant issue of that convention is that it also helps with trying to control the tax evasion that takes place across the world every day by multinationals who use different countries in order to set up their management arrangements for this very specific purpose of evading tax. And we know that that's been the case for years, and we know that both under coalition and Labor governments there have been attempts to try and reduce that or prevent that in different ways. But it's not very, very easy when you are dealing with entities that operate from different countries, and when those countries are not prepared to comply with an arrangement whereby people are required to pay their fair share of tax. It's not good for either country. And so to have the tax convention signed between Portugal and Australia is something ideally welcome, because whilst it won't stop these entities from operating the same kinds of schemes in other countries, at least it's another country that has added its name to the list of global countries that are out there trying to minimise tax evasion by multinationals, which runs into the trillions of dollars every year. And I know that it would make a huge difference to the budget here in Australia if those companies and those entities paid their full range of tax that they should be paying, but which they are able to evade because they list their management centres in countries that are of low tax jurisdictions. So, Deputy Speaker, with those comments, I commend this legislation. It's another example of how Labor is committed to the superannuation scheme that was introduced back in '92, and how we continuously have to ensure that it meets the requirements of today's people. Thank you.
I now call the Assistant Minister for Immigration.
Thank you, Speaker. Superannuation was introduced by Labor to provide workers with dignity in retirement. It was a way of saying thank you to workers for their decades of contribution to the workforce, to the companies and the organisations that they work for. And it was an opportunity to provide them with a comfortable retirement, a holiday every now and then, enough to look after the grandkids, and ensure that they had dignity in their senior years. And the system has grown to one of the largest pool of investment funds anywhere in the world, providing support for economic growth in our economy and ensuring that we have jobs for Australians into the future. But we need to make sure that our superannuation laws keep pace with changes in our economy and continue to provide that principled dignity for Australian workers in their retirement. And this bill introduces a number of reforms to superannuation and tax laws to achieve just that. This seeks to deliver on election commitments, to streamline systems and processes and to reduce compliance costs for taxpayers. We're ensuring that more Australians earn more, keep more of what they earn and retire with more as well. And that's another step in strengthening a system that delivers on its purpose of providing income for a dignified retirement. Australians deserve to make an informed choice about their superannuation when starting a new job. So Schedule 1 of this bill streamlines the choice of fund process so that workers can see and can consider their existing stapled fund when they start a new job. Stapling was introduced to ensure that employers pay superannuation contributions to an employer's existing superannuation fund if they don't make a choice. That helps reduce the duplication of accounts that eventually erode retirement savings through unnecessary fees and insurance premiums. Earlier access to stapled fund details means that employees can make that choice with confidence and employers have the right information to support the government's payday super reforms. Schedule 2 introduces a targeted ban on superannuation advertising during onboarding. This amendment introduces a ban on advertising superannuation products to an employee, specifically at the point that the employee is onboarding when they start a new job. This is a key moment for employees, and they should be able to engage with their super in a safe and informed way, free from inappropriate pressures or product promotion. Australians deserve protection from inappropriate advertising when they provide their superannuation details to an employer during onboarding. Limited exceptions ensure workers can still see their stapled fund, the employer's default fund or a regulated MySuper product, keeping the focus on transparency, not sales tactics. These reforms build on the government's broader work to strengthen superannuation, legislating the purpose of super, lifting the superannuation guarantee to 12%, again ensuring that we provide that dignity for workers in retirement as the cost of living increases, boosting the low-income superannuation tax offset and paying super on paid parental leave. All measures ensure at providing equality for women in the workforce and providing dignity for seniors in retirement. We've implemented major reforms to ensure funds deliver for their members, from the financial accountability regime to stronger reporting standards to expanding the performance test from around 80 products to more than 800. We're proud of Australia's superannuation system, proud of the workers that it supports and proud of the government that is ensuring it continues to deliver for generations of workers to come. Schedule 3 of this bill provides targeted tax exemptions to help Australia host the Men's and Women's Rugby World Cups in 27 and 29, ensures that we remain competitive and trusted to host major international sporting events. Similar exemptions were provided for the 2023 Women's FIFA World Cup, the 2020 ICC T20 World Cup, and this measure follows a well-established approach in supporting international sporting events in Australia and will importantly form part of our strategy around those sporting events in the lead up to the pinnacle, the Olympics in Brisbane in 2032 and the Paralympic Games. Schedule 4 of the bill amends the International Tax Agreements Act to give force to a law for the convention between Australia and Portugal, which was signed on 30 November 2023. The convention is the first of its kind between Australia and Portugal and will provide avenues to support closer bilateral linkages with Portugal, particularly in areas of commercial trade, investment and innovation. It'll do so by reducing withholding tax on dividends, interest and royalties, which will reduce tax disincentives to investment and the cost of business for accessing foreign capital. The Convention will also reduce compliance costs for taxpayers and improve certainty for individual businesses that have dealings in Australia and in Portugal by determining allocation of profits from cross-border dealings between the two countries. Finally, the Convention supports Australia's plan to make multinationals pay their fair share of tax and strengthens the integrity of our taxation system. Schedule 6 delivers on the government's commitment to provide tax relief for Australia's wine producers. The support for wine producers comes under the existing wine equalisation tax producer rebate scheme from 1 July 2026 by increasing the rebate cap of $350,000 to $400,000 per financial year. And Schedule 6 will support approximately 3,000 wine producers. These changes back local producers, keeping money flowing through regional towns and supporting investment and jobs. Speaker, these are commitments that Labor made in the lead up to the last election. Again, it's proof the Albanese government is delivering on our economic commitments and ensuring that Australian workers continue to be provided with dignity and equality in the workforce, particularly in retirement.
The original question was that the bill be now read a second time, to which the honourable member for Fairfax moved as an amendment that all words after that be omitted with a view to substituting other words. The honourable member for Wentworth has moved as an amendment to that amendment that all words after whilst be omitted with a view to substituting other words. The immediate question is that the amendment moved by the honourable member for Wentworth be agreed to. Put the question. All those of that opinion say aye. Against, no.
No.
The question is that the amendment moved by the honourable member for Fairfax be agreed to. Put the question. All those of that opinion say aye. Against, no.
No. The noes have it.
As it is to resolve this question to enable further questions be considered in relation to this bill in accordance with the Standing Order 195, the bill will be returned to the House for further consideration. I call the clerk. I now call the member for Menzies.
I move that the Federation Chamber be now adjourned.
And I call the seconder, member for McPherson.
I second the motion.
I now call the member for Bean.
No.
I now call the member for Longman.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Behind all the distractions and all the mudslinging, one thing remains true. Surviving in this country is getting harder. This is what my constituents are telling me, and it's what I've been seeing with my own eyes. If you talk to people around Longman, you'll be hard-pressed to meet someone who isn't struggling or worried about someone else who is. Whether it be interest rates, house prices, unemployment, the cost of utilities, support for aged care, small businesses, or just the cost of a good night out, most are having to tighten their belts to unbearable limits. And we are really starting to see the impact of this. Just the other day, we saw another interest rate rise, the 13th rise since the election of May 2022. Now, this Labor government will say there have been 2 cuts since they came to government, but with 13 rises and 2 cuts, in my book, that's a net result of 11 rises, which is simply too much for the average household to bear. With house prices already being out of reach for many, anyone who has scraped by on their house purchase now has the added pressure of another 0.25% in their interest rate. Now, it pushes the cash rates to 3.85, but you need to consider that banks don't charge the Reserve Bank's rates. While those of us who lived through the 80s and 90s, that might seem low, I can remember buying my first home in 1990 with an interest rate nudging 20. But, Deputy Speaker, the difference was that the purchase price was less than 2 times my annual gross wage. And that would be like buying a home now for around $200,000, and I say good luck with that. I could afford the repayments on one wage with a stay-at-home wife and 4 small children. So fortunately, we didn't have the expense of childcare. Again, good luck with that today. Let's not forget, not all loans are mortgages. Increasingly, we are seeing people take out personal and payday loans at sometimes crazy high interest rates. Sometimes it's for a car, sometimes for a school excursion, sometimes it's just for groceries and utility bills. People are slipping further and further behind and taking out these high interest loans, and it only makes a bad situation worse. And it's all down to bad economic management by this government. Deputy Speaker, media sources have reported that the median house price in Queensland has now reached over $1 million. To put that in a local perspective, a home and land package for a 4-bedroom family home in Beachmere starts at over $900,000. A similar package in Caboolture South and Burpengary and Morayfield start at just under $800,000. For around $850,000, you can find a similar package in Upper Caboolture and Caboolture. Scrolling through real estate websites will show similar results for established family homes. This is quite incredible, as pre-COVID in late 2019, just 6 years ago, many of the homes were selling for under $400,000. Consider the current variable rate around 5.59% on an $800,000 30-year home loan. The repayments for such a loan will be $4,500 a month. As one of the lowest income electorates, these repayments simply do not fit into the average family income. Any additional rising in interest rates pushes home ownership further and further out of reach for the people of Longman and in Australia more generally. As a result, we're seeing people forego a lot of things that we used to take for granted. Deputy Speaker, there's this myth around that the Labor Party are the party for the battler. Well, I'd like to say that that's been dispelled. Some of these crazy programs that they've got and these policies, such as the home battery program. To buy one of these batteries for a 10 kilowatt, the average out-of-pocket expense is $9,000. And I've got to tell you that when I talk to my people in Longman, there's not many that have a lazy $9,000 laying around to be able to do that. So the people who have got more money can afford to pay for the $9,000, they get cheaper power. But the poor people who can't afford to pay that $9,000, they're even more out of pocket. So that doesn't seem particularly fair to me or a government that's looking after the low income earner. In fact, it's the very opposite. It's the government looking after high income earners. And let's couple that with the FBT exemption on electric vehicles. The people in Longman, a lot of them, they're not going to be able to afford 70, 80, 90 grand for a Tesla and take advantage of that. They'll be buying cheaper cars that are powered by diesel and petrol. And of course, they'll be cheaper, but they don't get that FBT exemption. It's a joke, and even though this government might not stand up for those battlers, I tell you what, I'm not going to stop, and I'm on your side.
I call the member for B.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Last week I hosted the Capital Region Showcase here at Parliament House, an event to highlight the breadth and depth of experiences and attractions that are available right across the Capital Region. Canberra is written off by many as a boring place for politics, politicians and public servants, and I always appreciate being able to showcase what our region has to offer, including pieces from national cultural institutions, local foods, local wines and attractions. The showcase featured 38 exhibitors and included the National Gallery of Australia, the National Film and Sound Archive, the National Museum of Australia, the AIS, the Museum of Australian Democracy, the National Portrait Gallery, Questacon and the National Zoo and Aquarium. There was also the chance to sample food and drink from producers across the region, including Underground Spirits, a strong representative from the Bean electorate, Eden Road Wines, the Canberra Distillery, Garlicious Grown, Bent's Spoke and many others. Thank you to all those that participated in the event and for making it a wonderful evening. And thank you to the National Capital Attractions Association, the ACT Government and Visit Canberra for the assistance in pulling this event together. Deputy Speaker, one of the many privileges of my role is the ability to elevate and showcase the incredible things on offer in my community and the broader region. And I look forward to being able to continue to showcase my community throughout this term of Parliament. Deputy Speaker, Australia Day is a time to reflect on our community, welcoming new citizens into it and recognising those that have completed incredible acts of service within it. The Bean community is fortunate enough to have many of these individuals, including a significant number of people receiving recognition for work within the Australian military and defence forces. Brigadier Nathan Jurknowitz for exceptional service in senior command appointments in Forces Command and Special Operations Command, and Commodore Nathan Robb for exceptional service to the Royal Australian Navy in the field of maritime logistics, Group Captain Anthony Kay for outstanding achievement in the application of skills and judgment in the development and control of air mobility capability for the Australian Defence Force, Wing Commander Grant Leader for meritorious achievement as the liaison officer within the United States Air Warfare Centre, Warrant Officer Cheryl Collins for meritorious performance of duty as Command Warrant Officer, Training Force, Command Warrant Officer Navy People and Warrant Officer Joint Operations Command, and Warrant Officer Class 1 Anthony Looktahan for meritorious service over successive regimental sergeant major appointments as a senior enlisted advisor, master trainer and mentor. Thank you all for your service to our community and for the safeguarding of our nation. Deputy Speaker, last week I had the opportunity to visit the Western Creek Men's Shed down in Rivette to recognise the incredible volunteer work of Bill Wallace. Bill's work as a volunteer began with the Scouts and led to him being heavily involved in the development of Camp Cottermouth. From there, he has assisted in numerous volunteer roles, including assisting the police force with bush survival training and volunteering with the Mountain Trails Adventure School at Wee Jasper. Bill is the Men's Shed's current workshop manager and spends many hours a week tutoring and nurturing others in the woodworking trade and ensuring that the workshop is a safe, comfortable workplace for anyone that wants to join the workshop. The president of the Men's Shed, Brian Black, described him as your quintessential doer, practical, skilled and ever ready to help without question. He thoroughly deserves to be honoured by his community, and I couldn't agree more. Bill's story is just one example of the incredible volunteer work completed by people across the Bean community every week. Deputy Speaker, one of my highlights each year is the Bean Volunteer Recognition Evening, where volunteer organisations right across the community come together to celebrate the work of those that so often goes unrecognised and unrewarded. I look forward to continuing to recognise these individuals throughout this term of Parliament and celebrating the Bean Volunteer Recognition Evening again in the main committee room of this Parliament building as well.
I now call the member for Wright.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. When we left government, there were 415,000 apprentices and trainees in the system. Today, just 4 years later, you reckon there's more or less? There's over 100,000 less. And irrespective of the rhetoric that you hear from this government about all things well and fine and dandy in the skills and training space, I can assure you we are in a world of hurt. The skills shortages in this country is now at breaking point, and there's no solution coming from those on the other side. Just fathom that. 117,000 less apprentices and trainees today than when we left government. And then can you imagine what that transfers to and looks like in the housing construction sector? When we left office, Housing Industry Australia, Simon Croft's data suggests that on average 200,000 houses a year were being constructed across the country. A simple Google search now will reveal to you that in the last reporting period of 12 months, you reckon housing construction numbers were up or down? Down again. 170,000. But they've got ambitious targets, Madam Speaker. Ridiculously ambitious targets. In order for them to get from the average of where they are at the moment, from 170,000, just back to where we were, they would then have to start building houses at around 125,000 a year to catch up. But they're not going to do that. And to meet their own targets of 1.2 million houses into the future, they'd have to be averaging 255,000. Now, never before in the history of the Australian construction sector has those numbers ever been met. But I tell you what they are good at, because it takes a special type of incompetence to bring in 1.2 million migrants into this country, and either intentionally or through some magic pudding economics just happen to leave off electricians, plumbers, roofers, plasterers, tilers, all the people that are on the skills trade list. And when you think, why don't they bring these people in to help with the construction sector? Why is it? And then you think, who runs their campaigns? What power does the unions have in ensuring that the skills list that we need to build the infrastructure required for the future, what is it that the unions have that stops these people being on the skills list? Well, it's only a Liberal government. It's only a coalition government that will adjust the immigration numbers, that will adjust and have it targeted to the skills migration, to address the housing shortages, to address the skills that we need. And God help, there's a reason that we did not support some of Labor's housing plans, because particularly the 5% boost up, it's just gone straight to making it 5% more dearer for people to get into homes, because we've seen the inflationary pressure in housing prices adjust accordingly, and it happens every single time. But I tell you what, these guys, if politics was Olympic sport, what the Australian Labor Party would be gold medalists in is taking credit for stuff when stuff's going well, but they have got a list from here to Burke of people to blame, and when they don't have to take responsibility of themselves. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's fault. This Labor government is appalling, and it's only a coalition government that can get this country back on track. Tomorrow our party will be having a leadership spill. I come from a regional seat. I come from a leadership bill. I come from a regional community, and mostly farmers. Agriculture is our largest contributor to GDP. When I shake the hand of my leader and say that you have my support, you take that to the bank. So when the deal's on tomorrow, Australia needs to know I don't shirk from my responsibilities to support my leader. It's how I was bred. It's my principles, and they will always guide me.
I now call the member for Reid.
Thank you. The political debate in Australia has become more and more heated, particularly around discussions on immigration. Our immigration system must work to strengthen Australia, keeping us safe and helping us prosper. And we should have a mature discussion about it, but it must be done so with honesty, nuance and compassion, and with facts. Post-COVID, when the borders reopened, we did see an influx of people coming to Australia. We were in very unusual circumstances. It was Australians returning home, international students enrolled at education institutions who were finally able to come on shore. And immigration was too high. It needed to come down, and we've done that. It's now come down 40% in the last few years. We've made significant changes to our migration system to improve its integrity and set more sustainable levels. We've also provided additional resources to our security agencies so they're better able to conduct security checks. And this year, our permanent migration program is 185,000 people, the same as last year. 70% of those are skilled visa holders. They are people working in areas where we desperately need more workers, in aged care, childcare and healthcare. The rest are predominantly for families, Australians falling in love overseas, bringing their partners and children back home. And I think we should always be looking at the shape and size of our migration system, making sure it continues to work for the interest of Australia. But we need to be honest about the consequences of pulling down some of those levers. Do we want to reduce the number of skilled workers? What impact will that have on hospitals, aged care and agriculture sectors? Do we want to make it harder for Australians who are bringing loved ones here? These are questions that those opposite could never answer when they were trying to make changes to the migration system. But they are all legitimate discussions because this is something that we as a country need to discuss openly and honestly. But we should always do so with compassion and humanity and never resort to the term mass migration, because the term mass migration masks people's stories and their contributions. We must never forget that our migration system is made up of people. People with names, with stories, with aspirations, and with a contribution to make. In the migration debate, I hope we never forget those people. People like my parents, Pet and Sipan Situ. My story is both improbable and yet typical of so many migrant families in Australia. My parents fled their homeland, fearful of what might happen to them because of who they were and the values they held. My family is of Chinese heritage, but my parents were born and raised in Laos. They fled their homeland and were incredibly lucky Australia gave them refuge. When my parents came here, they had very little formal education and spoke very little English. And yet they were able to thrive here. They worked hard in factories where they were able to find secure work with good conditions. They gave my brother and me the opportunities that they never got, and my family thrived here. I am the proud daughter of migrants. I am the federal member of the Australian Parliament, and I proudly represent one of the most diverse electorates in the country. I have met the most extraordinary people in my electorate, those who are newer to this country and those whose families have been here for generations, and they've embraced the very best of the Australian story. Our freedoms to speak out, to hold a faith, and to build the life we want, and our responsibilities to those around us so that we may all prosper together. I hope you see in their stories and in mine the power of the Australian story, because stories like ours are only possible in countries like Australia. Our success here is one of the best expressions of Australian values. Where else would it have been possible that we can live with freedom, respect, fairness, and above all, equality of opportunity?
I now call the member for Moncrieff.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, here we go again. It seems like the CFMEU saga will never, ever end. But this time, it isn't just another messy chapter in the long and troubled history of the CFMEU. It is something far more serious. It's an industrial-scale cover-up that goes to the heart of this Albanese Labor government. It has been revealed that the Prime Minister's own appointed CFMEU administrator has ordered the removal of several sections of the report into the corruption that exists between the CFMEU and the Australian Labor Party. It wasn't simply a typo. It was the removal of sections, whole chapters in fact. Chapters that detailed the connection between corrupt and criminal conduct inside the CFMEU and the Labor Party. Let's be clear about what this means. The opposition wrote to the administrator last year. We lodged freedom of information requests. We wrote directly to Minister Rishworth seeking the full release of the report. We asked for transparency. We asked for sunlight. Instead, what we now discover is that the sections exposing the deep heart of corruption between the CFMEU and the Labor Party have been redacted, whitewashed, scrubbed from the public's view. and according to Geoffrey Watson, anti-corruption expert and author of this report, it was because he was directed to remove those sections and remove those sections, directed by the government's own appointed administrator, to remove references that connected the CFMEU to the Australian Labor Party. This is a complete and utter lack of accountability and transparency, all from a government that went to the 2025 election promising transparency to the Australian people. What a disgrace. This comes after the Prime Minister told the Australian people he would not take CFMEU donations, only for Australian Electoral Commission disclosures to reveal that promise was another broken promise. This report, in its unredacted form, reportedly highlights that some $15 billion of Australian taxpayer money has been washed through a cartel network involving the CFMEU and the Australian Labor Party. $15 billion, that is a huge number. It's around about the same amount of money as the childcare support that Australians get. At a time when families are struggling with their mortgages, when rents are soaring, when young Australians are being locked out of home ownership. And what sits over the top of all of this? What is it? A criminal cartel tax on Australia's housing industry, driven by corrupt conduct and protected by political interference. Everyday Australians are paying more for construction. Young Australians are paying more for their first home. And this government has been running interference to stop the truth from coming out. How is that transparency? Last year, time and again, we sought parliamentary scrutiny. We sought Senate inquiries. We sought answers in question time. We sought proper examination of the relationship between the CFMEU and the Labor Party. And what did we see? What did we see? We saw questions being shut down. We saw inquiries being blocked. We saw debate being guillotined. But what do we truly expect anything else from this government? Do we expect anything else? The Labor Party, with assistance from what appears to be their coalition partner in the Greens, have repeatedly run interference for those at the top of the CFMEU tree who are engaging in corrupt and criminal conduct. Now the truth is emerging, but this chamber should not have to wait for drip-fed revelations. The minister must release the full, unredacted, non-whitewashed report now. Not a sanitised version, not a politically convenient summary, but the whole report. Australians deserve to know. What did the minister know? And when did she know it? Why was the administrator allowed to excise chapters linking corrupt conduct to the Labor Party? And why has the government consistently run interference to shield the Prime Minister from scrutiny? And let me say this. The administrator's position is now completely and utterly untenable. To seek the removal of not just a few lines, but entire chapters detailing connection between corruption and that sort of conduct and the governing party of this country is simply extraordinary. This is not just about industrial relations, it is about the integrity of public life. It's about whether a government can allow a cartel culture to flourish in exchange for political support and donations. It's about whether taxpayers' money has been funnelled through the corrupt network while Australians struggle to pay their bills. Wake up! Albanese government, wake up!
I call the Assistant Minister for Social Services, Prevention of Family Violence.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Now, medical misogyny and gender bias are rife in the health system. Every single woman has a story, and I'm incredibly proud that this Labor government has launched a national conversation about this. You see, before you even consider the compounding effects of intersectionality and women with disability or LGBTIQA+ communities, First Nations or people from a cold background, we hear stories from women about how their pain has been dismissed, there's misdiagnoses, symptoms are minimised. Health guidelines around diseases have been written over centuries by men, about men and for men. Because you see, Deputy Speaker, we now know that there are very vast differences between the pathophysiology of a male body and a female body. Women are not small men. Our gender bias survey found that 2 out of 3 respondents reported they experienced discrimination and bias in the health system. 70% of that was from GPs and half of it in hospitals. I myself was really launched into action around this issue when my cousin, who presented to an emergency department with some symptoms of tingling from her waist down, she felt unwell, a bit faint, her feet were numb and she had pins and needles. She was barely examined in that ED. She was just told she was being anxious, she was tired, she needed a rest. She was sent home with some Panadol and told to call her GP. My cousin, Risa, died that night, alone in her house, from an aortic abdominal aneurysm that had ruptured. Now, I couldn't help but wonder, as a late 50s single woman, if she had have been a man of the same age who walked into that ED in a suit and a tie and gave the exact same symptoms, would they merely have sent him home as anxious and worried and tired? I don't think so. Now, I'm not suggesting, of course, that there is some national conspiracy about this, that there's a whole bunch of doctors and nurses and health professionals out there conspiring against women. Of course not. We all know our health professionals work incredibly hard under terrible circumstances and they do the very best they can. But this is a systemic issue. I myself, as a nurse, was taught in that system. I know how it is inbuilt into everything that we do in those health facilities. So that is why, when I became the Assistant Minister for Health, I was laser focused on tackling gender bias in the health system. And it's now been, I'm incredibly proud to say, 1 year since we announced over $500 million for women's health. A package that meant cheaper contraception, increased rebates for IUDs and birth control implants. And we added huge bulk billing incentives for women who will save up to $400 when they have an IUD implanted. We added Yaz, Yasmin and Slinda to the PBS. It's the first time in 30 years that a contraception has been added to the PBS, saving women up to $350, opening up centres and training of excellence, transformative menopause care, adding Estrogel, Prometrium and Estrogel Pro to the PBS. The first time in 20 years. My goodness, this is saving some women up to $600. People actually stop me in the street, Deputy Speaker, and thank me for that. We introduced an MBS item number for menopause. We've created the first ever national guidelines around this, training for health professionals in women's health, review of bone densitometry, expansion of endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics, better access to UTI and contraception through pharmacies, over-the-counter medicines from the pharmacists. We've had conversations with medical schools and deans of medicine about how they teach medicine to their students. This is huge work that all goes into making the health and well-being of women better. But the work is not done. Assistant Minister Rebecca White is now a champion for women as the Assistant Minister for Health. And she knows, and she's going to be working on what really needs to be done in the next steps. There's so much more to do for women's health, for social services, housing, employment, law, communications, disability and finance. I see a really bright future for women under an Albanese Labor government. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 10:30 a.m. on Monday, 2nd of March 2026.